Chapter 456. I haven't even said anything. What are you not allowing? Chu Qingyan argued unhappily. Xiao Su looked at her coldly. You want to pretend to be a family member to deliver the goods? I won't allow that. I promise I won't. I won't do anything rash. I just want to take the opportunity to go in and take a look. Maybe I can get some information. Chu Qingyan raised her uninjured hand and swore to the heavens. This was a rare opportunity. Although they still had almost a month, time was the last thing they needed. The ice crystal flower was right in front of them, but they couldn't get it no matter what. The itch in her heart was unbearable. No matter what, she had to take the initiative for once. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Yi Lingfeng interrupted. Brother Xiao, I think Miss Chu's suggestion is quite good. Maybe she really will get something. Xiao Su looked at him coldly. You're going along with her nonsense too? Yi Lingfeng couldn't help but laugh. I know you're worried about Miss Chu's safety, but you have to believe in her abilities. She was able to bring back 2 important pieces of information from the Blue Manor. This is enough to prove her abilities. Why can't you trust her? Besides, we have our family members around. They will constantly remind her to make sure she doesn't make any mistakes. Xiao Su hesitated. Chu Qingyan, who saw his hesitation, immediately tugged at his sleeve and begged, Big Ice Block, didn't you say that I have to discuss everything with you? Look at how you reject everything I discuss with you. How am I supposed to talk to you in the future? Xiao Su remembered what he promised her the night before and sighed. I'm just worried that you're not familiar with the palace's rules and will make mistakes easily. Don't worry, I'll learn the Jiang Kingdom's palace rules in the next 2 days. I'll try my best to be obedient and not make a single mistake. Chu Qingyan knew that he had already agreed, so she decided to strike while the iron was hot. Once I enter the palace, I will obediently follow behind the Yi clan servants, just like this. She made a gesture of holding a piece of cloth in her hands, then continued walking without looking sideways. Yi Lingfeng, who was at the side, was amused by her actions. Hey, Brother Xiao, this clown of yours can fight monsters and kill enemies, but she can also play dumb. She's really too interesting. Look at her silly appearance. Who would pay attention to her when she enters the palace? Chu Qingyan immediately raised her eyebrows when she heard the words that sounded both like praise and derision. I'm naturally cute when I stay in the depths of the forest. It's different from being silly, okay? Don't simply use words. She had only pretended to be a 10-year-old girl who was trembling in fear when entering the palace, but she had been laughed at like this. Didn't they say that he had a glib tongue and respected girls the most? She seriously doubted that such a person would become the object of pursuit of all the young women in Jiang country. However, it was also because of Yi Lingfeng's jesting from the side that Xiao Su let her pass after careful consideration. Your injuries haven't healed yet. You can only enter the palace when your injuries have healed. Chu Qingyan hurriedly nodded. As you wish. Her injuries weren't deep to begin with, and they had already begun to scab. She would be able to move around the next day, so she readily agreed. I will send someone into the palace tomorrow. When the time comes, I will send someone to inform Miss Chu. Yi Lingfeng took his leave after this matter was settled. Although he wasn't in charge, as the young master, he had to oversee the Imperial Household Department's large purchase of cloth this time. After Yi Lingfeng left, Chu Qingyan was all smiles as she leaned on Xiao Su's desk, resting her chin on her hands. Her gaze followed his movements as he wrote, and her lips curved into a smile from time to time. If you have something to say, just say it. Xiao Su paused and glanced at her. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. Big Ice Cube, how did you know that I had something to say? Xiao Su curved his lips. Her mood was written all over her face, so it was difficult for him to turn a blind eye to it. Seeing that he only glanced at her before continuing to write, Chu Qingyan wasn't annoyed. She said with a cheerful smile, Big Ice Cube, I am very happy that you will let me enter the palace. You did what you promised me the day before yesterday. Sure enough, I have something to discuss with you. It's not bad. When she was happy, her words didn't make sense. Xiao Su shook his head. You are too inexperienced. You must be very careful when you enter the palace. Chu Qingyan nodded. I know to be careful with my words and actions. The more you say, the more mistakes you make. The less you say, the less mistakes you make. It's good that you don't say anything. I think that you are still a fool even if you stay in the depths. Xiao Su put down his brush and left the study with his hands behind his back. Chu Qingyan's good mood immediately turned gloomy. Who said that I am a fool? I am very smart. It was a pity that he had already walked far away. He could no longer hear her roar. Perhaps he heard it. Otherwise, where did that smile on his lips come from? However, Chu Qingyan, who was watching his back, didn't have the chance to see it. The little fellow still needed to gain experience. This time, he would treat it as her experience. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with anticipation. The little fellow would always surprise him. He hoped that she wouldn't disappoint him. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet and gnashed her teeth at his back. Then, she looked at the empty study room and was no longer in the mood to read. She should have been recuperating in her room, but she moved here because she wanted to accompany the ice cube. Now that he wasn't here, she couldn't stay any longer. Thus, she also left the study room. Her mother had recently picked up embroidery again, so she didn't want to disturb her. Her father should be playing with the wood spirit at this time. The fire spirit had gone to Shangua and wasn't here. Turin was busy with the ice cube's matters. Yen Luo was researching a way to treat her father's illness. She was too embarrassed to look for her. As for Ethereal, she didn't know what to talk to him about. She didn't know anything about medicinal herbs. In the end, only Duguqing, who was as idle as her, was left. She walked towards Duguqing's room. Before she reached her door, she saw Duguqing's figure standing in the courtyard. She didn't know what she was thinking. Sister Dugu, what are you doing? Chu Qingyan held her injured arm and walked towards her. When Duguqing turned to look at Chu Qingyan could vaguely see that Duguqing had not managed to hide her emotions in time. She looked serious and a little sad. This was completely different from the Duguqing that Chu Qingyan had seen before. Chu Qingyan could not help but be a little stunned. However, Duguqing had already recovered and greeted her with a smile. Why are you suddenly looking for me? What's so fun about it? Chu Qingyan thought that maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. She walked over slowly. Can't I look for you if there's nothing? Duguqing shrugged and spread her hands. You don't know that because of your injury, your ice cube put a ban on me. He said that I can't take you out at will before your injury is healed. You see, you've dragged me down and caused me to be unable to go out now. I'm afraid that people will misunderstand and say that I'm going to do something bad with you again. Chu Qingyan smiled embarrassedly. It's my fault that I've dragged you down. Don't take it to heart. Duguqing smiled magnanimously. It's nothing. Anyway, I can still look for Ling Feng if I have nothing to do in the residence. Oh right, I noticed that there are a lot of guards in your residence. Where did they go? They went to Shang country. They should be back in 2 days. Sister Dugu, what's wrong? Chu Qingyan saw the slight change in her expression and couldn't help but ask in confusion. No, nothing. The wind is a little strong. She was just casually asking, but when she heard these two familiar words, she felt a little complicated. Chapter 457. Duguqing's strange behavior did not attract Chu Qingyan's attention. Instead, she changed the topic to the palace. This piqued Duguqing's interest, and she insisted on going with her no matter what. Coincidentally, Ling Feng was passing by with a group of people. Duguqing immediately went up to him and pestered him to enter the palace with Chu Qingyan. Ling Feng was having a headache. Did these two people think that they were going to the palace for fun? But on second thought, although Duguqing was boisterous, she was quite reassuring. Hence, Ling Feng agreed. Chu Qingyan looked at Duguqing, who was cheering after Ling Feng left. She muttered in her heart. Compared to before, she felt that Ling Feng was much more lenient towards Duguqing. Why did the two of them suddenly become so close? The day of the palace visit arrived as promised. Chu Qingyan and Duguqing changed into the Yi family's maidservant's clothes and followed the Yi family's housekeeper out. Mr. Chu, Qing Yenluo and the rest, who had heard the news, gathered around them. Kai, this is the itching powder I made over the past 2 days. Carry it with you for self-defense. If bad guys come, sprinkle it all over them. I guarantee that they'll scratch their heads until they bleed. Mr. Chu stuffed the packet of medicine into his daughter's hands. Father, have you tested this medicine before? Chu Qingyan looked at the medicine bag in her hand. There seemed to be some sand seeping out from the corners of the bag. She seriously suspected that the bag was filled with sand. Mr. Chu nodded proudly. Yes, I sprinkled it on Little Black and I don't know where it is now. I'm guessing that it must have gone to scratch its itch. Little Black was the Yi family's watchdog. It was said that it had been tormented by her father for the past 2 days and did not dare to come out. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame and hid the packet of medicine in her sleeve. At this moment, Qing Yenluo walked over and handed a bottle to Chu Qingyan. This is mystifying bamboo incense. Once it touches someone, they will pass out. You can use it to protect yourself if you're in danger. Chu Qingyan accepted the bottle gratefully. At this moment, Turin walked over. He did not give her medicine, but a small bamboo tube. If you're in danger, light this and we will rush over to save you. Chu Qingyan held the tube in her hand. She suddenly felt that she was not going to the palace to gather information, but to die. She could not help but recall a line from a poem. The wind blew and the water turned. Chu Qingyan felt. Little Qingyan, you are so lucky. So many people care about you. Dugu Qing smiled enviously. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes and said, Didn't you have a bottle of medicine just now as well? Isn't it all thanks to you? Dugu Qing smiled. All right, I hope these things don't come in handy. Otherwise, we'll really be caught as assassins. Chu Qingyan agreed that it was better to be careful with her words and actions. When Chu Qingyan and Dugu Qing left the courtyard, Yi Lingfeng stood in the corridor and glanced at the person beside him. If you're worried, why don't you send her off? I've already decided to let her fly. There's no need for that. When a baby eagle learns to fly, the old eagle will not accompany it. It will only learn to fly from afar. Without the old eagle's support, the eagle will learn to fly quickly. What happened today would happen a second time. He was not an indecisive person, so he was a man of his word. Even if he was filled with worry, he would only watch quietly from behind as she learned to walk. No wonder you could nurture such a group of elites like the fierce cavalry. No wonder your Fu Huang is so wary of you. Yi Lingfeng looked in the direction of the Sichuan and sighed. You have the ability to accomplish great things. Unfortunately, you don't have the heart to accomplish great things. But it's good this way. That kind of scheming life is not for people. Xiao Su's expression was light. Since he had let it go, there was no need to be so emotional. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Dugu Qing had already reached the palace gates. After layers of inspection and interrogation, they successfully entered the palace. The palace of the Jiang Kingdom was different from the other palaces she had seen. Its palace walls were higher than ordinary palaces. To a certain extent, it could prevent people from attacking from the outside. Chu Qingyan inadvertently sized up the palace walls. She found that at a certain height, there would be a small window that could allow one person to enter. She guessed that when the palace was surrounded by enemies, the people inside could use this window to shoot arrows. It could be said that this was a good barrier that was easy to defend but hard to attack. Now that it was peacetime, those small windows had been welded with iron pillars. No one could enter. On the palace walls, there was a guard every 3 steps. No wonder Turin said that it would be difficult to sneak into the palace at night. The problem should be here. Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze and followed closely behind the steward of the Yi family without looking sideways. Beside her, Dugu Qing looked around with a judgmental gaze. Chu Qingyan felt that it was strange. If it was a normal woman entering the palace for the first time, shouldn't she be filled with amazement? Why didn't she see curiosity in Dugu Qing, but comparison and pickiness in her eyes? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. The women she met along the way were all very interesting. At least they were compatible with her, such as Yen Luo and Dugu Qing. They walked along a very long palace path. On both sides of the path were vermilion walls. The glazed tiles on the palace walls overlapped like the wings of a bird, full of layers. Because the people inside urged them to hurry, they didn't dare to delay. When they reached the corner of a hall, a palace maid and a eunuch stood there to receive them. They said that they didn't need to go to the imperial household department and could go directly to the Qinyu Palace. The steward of the Yi family was surprised. "Aren't we going to Eunuch Su to deliver the goods?" The palace maid replied. Today, Eunuch Su happened to mention to the empress that the Yi family was purchasing goods. The empress said that she wanted to see the cloth in advance. The steward of the Yi family didn't ask any more questions. He immediately agreed and followed the two with his men. Chu Qingyan didn't expect the journey to be so smooth. She wanted to go to the imperial household department to find out more information, but she didn't expect to go to the empress's palace. She and Duguqing exchanged glances and nodded secretly. They lowered their heads and hurried to follow. After going around in circles, Chu Qingyan almost fainted. When a magnificent palace came into view, Chu Qingyan knew that they had arrived at their destination. Just as the group was about to step onto the white jade steps, they heard the palace maid and eunuch bow. "Greetings, Princess Ning." "Greetings, Princess Ning." Chu Qingyan and Duguqing stood at the back. They didn't have time to see the people in front of them, so they knelt down with the rest. At this moment, a voice that Chu Qingyan was familiar with sounded from the front. "You may all rise." Chu Qingyan's expression changed. Why did this voice sound so familiar? Wasn't it? Tu Qing saw Chu Qingyan's expression and immediately pulled her up. "This young lady, please don't make any mistakes at this time." Chapter 458. With Duguqing's reminder, Chu Qingyan quickly came to her senses and stood still with her head slightly lowered. Although that voice sounded very much like the blue-clothed woman who had confronted her at the auction, it had nothing to do with her. She had a heavy responsibility on her shoulders, and she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. "What are you doing?" The person in front, who was called Princess Ning, asked. "Princess Ning, the Empress wants to see the new fabric. We are going to send it to her." The palace maid immediately replied respectfully. "Well, you can go. I won't delay your work." Princess Ning waved her hand and let them go. The group of people continued to move forward. "Wait," Princess Ning suddenly said. "The person holding the blue fabric at the back, stop." Chu Qingyan's heart skipped a beat, but she still stopped without changing her expression. She lowered her head slightly and raised the fabric in her hand slightly. That day in the Blue Manor, both of them were masked, so their faces couldn't be seen. Chu Qingyan believed that as long as she disguised well, she wouldn't be recognized today. The gentle footsteps came closer and she reached out to touch the fabric in her hand. "The color of the fabric is good. Send some bolts to my house tomorrow. I want to have a look." Chu Qingyan relaxed a lot when she heard that she was just looking at the fabric. She looked at the person standing beside her through the fabric. She was wearing a blue pomegranate skirt with a cloak of the same color. The hem of the skirt was embroidered with blue impatiens. Her figure was slender and delicate, and she wore a jade bracelet on her wrist. Her long black hair was combed into a spirit snake bun, black and shiny. A golden cloud hairpin was inserted in her hair, which made her look graceful and charming. Chu Qingyan felt that she couldn't be mistaken about her voice, figure, and walking posture. If Chu Qingyan hadn't seen her fierce and arrogant at the auction, she would have been deceived by her gentle and virtuous appearance. Although Princess Ning had a smile on her face, her almond-shaped eyes didn't show any trace of happiness. It could be seen that such a person was scheming and shrewd. If she was already like this at the age of 14 or 15, what would she be like in a few years? As soon as he finished, the palace maid and steward Yi hurriedly agreed. Thus, Chu Qingyan and the others continued their journey. Jiang Yutong took a few steps forward and suddenly frowned. She stopped and looked back. Why did that little girl look so familiar? "Princess?" The palace maid beside her saw her stop and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Jiang Yutong regained her senses and continued walking. "Nothing, let's go home." She had just gone to see Jiang Yunyao today. Just as she had expected, Jiang Yunyao did not have many days left to live. Thinking of this, her footsteps became lighter. Chu Qingyan and Duguqing followed the crowd to the entrance of Thousand Feathers Palace, but the Yi clan's people were stopped. An elderly nanny standing at the entrance of the palace glanced at the people standing at the bottom of the steps. After asking for the reason, she said to everyone, "Steward, go in." The rest of you wait outside the palace. Everyone responded. Duguqing watched as the cloth in her hand was taken by a palace maid. She then turned to whisper to Chu Qingyan, "The palace's security is really too tight." "Look." Chu Qingyan followed Duguqing's gaze and saw that the Thousand Feathers Palace was surrounded by palace guards. Their long spears were held upright, looking mighty and unyielding. Chu Qingyan nodded silently and said, "The Thousand Feathers Palace is the Empress' sleeping quarters. It is normal to have more defenses." Duguqing also nodded. The Jiang Kingdom's royal family only has one empress, one princess, and two princes. It's not like other countries where there are groups of concubines. So the palace doesn't need so many guards. It's not too much to send 3 layers of guards. Chu Qingyan felt that her words made sense, but she was more concerned about how to understand the situation while standing here. How to get information. Suddenly, Duguqing gave Chu Qingyan a look, and Chu Qingyan immediately understood. She clutched her stomach and squatted down, while Duguqing helped her up with an exaggerated expression. "Little Yen, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" My stomach hurts." Chu Qingyan's voice was full of emotion, as if she couldn't bear it anymore. Duguqing laughed wildly in her heart, but she didn't dare to show it. She said a few words. "What should we do? This is the palace. I want to go to the latrine." Chu Qingyan looked like she was holding it in very hard. Duguqing hurriedly asked the palace maid beside her, "Sister, do you know where the latrine is? My little sister is not feeling well." This palace maid was from Thousand Feathers Palace. She saw Chu Qingyan's painful appearance from the side just now. She didn't think much and said, "Please come with me." Duguqing thanked her repeatedly. She supported Chu Qingyan and followed behind her. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Duguqing secretly high-fived each other. Taking advantage of this walking time, Duguqing chatted with the palace maid. "Sister, you are so kind. If it weren't for you, my little sister would have made a fool of herself." Duguqing sighed. The palace maid was clearly not a dull person. She smiled when she heard this. "It's no trouble. It's just a small matter. Our imperial concubine often teaches us not to do evil because it's small, and not to do good because it's small. Our imperial concubine really has the heart of a bodhisattva. It's a pity that I didn't have the honor to see her when I entered the palace this time. But I feel honored to be so close to the imperial concubine." Duguqing's eyes lit up as if she really admired her. This palace maid seemed to be a loyal fan of the imperial concubine of Jiang country. After Duguqing expressed her admiration, she also let go of her temper and chatted with Duguqing. Through chatting, they learned that this palace maid was called Jing Lu, who served the imperial concubine of Jiang country. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but admire Duguqing's powerful ability to collect information. She only needed to pretend to be sick on the side, and she could learn some interesting things about the imperial concubine of Jiang country. After a while, they arrived at a secluded place where they could use the toilet. Duguqing and Chu Qingyan looked at each other, and then said to Jing Lu, "Sister, you go ahead with your business. I'll wait for little sister Xiaoyan. We'll go back by ourselves later." As soon as she finished speaking, Jing Lu thought that she still had something to do later. After Duguqing repeatedly assured her that she wouldn't get lost, she left in a hurry. Chu Qingyan came out of the toilet. "She's gone. She's gone. I found that this palace maid is quite simple." Duguqing recovered her usual cunning look and said with a smile, "Maybe the kind of master trains the kind of servant." Chu Qingyan said lightly. There were no concubines in the harem, so there was no competition for favor, and there was no scheming. The imperial concubine of Jiang country only needed to worry about her husband and children, and the people around her didn't have so many thoughts. "You go and find out the news first. I'll stay here. Come back quickly later." Duguqing waved her hand at her. Chu Qingyan nodded. The steward of the Yi family said that he has to go to the internal affairs department later. "I'll come back early." After saying that, she left in a direction. Chapter 459. Before coming here, Chu Qingyan had already memorized the topographic map that Yi Lingfeng had given her. Although it wasn't very accurate, she had more or less memorized the approximate location. Her first target was the Imperial Academy of Medicine. The Imperial Academy of Medicine was a bit far from her position. It wasn't easy to get there, and it was heavily guarded. Fortunately, Chu Qingyan relied on her petite figure and outstanding qinggong to cleverly avoid several groups of patrolling guards. Chu Qingyan exhaled lightly and hid behind a large pillar. Then, she planned to pass through the palace in front of her. Because the imperial family had a small population, most of the palaces here were empty. Because of this, it was convenient for her. As long as she encountered patrolling soldiers, she could climb over the wall and hide in the empty palace. However, after a while, Chu Qingyan encountered a problem. A group of soldiers was heading in her direction. From afar, she saw a few palace servants carrying plates coming towards her from behind the bushes. Chu Qingyan immediately leaped onto a pillar in the corridor. She saw that there was an open window by the wall. Without thinking, she flipped over and entered. After dodging a bullet, Chu Qingyan still didn't dare to relax. She looked around her current situation. She saw a large table in front of her. On the table, there was a variety of fresh vegetables. On the ground, there were green baskets of vegetable leaves. Chu Qingyan frowned. Based on her memory, she recalled the terrain in her head. It turned out that she had accidentally entered the imperial kitchen. This should be a room where vegetables were stored. At this time, a sound of footsteps came from afar. Chu Qingyan's heart thumped. She looked around. There were walls on all sides. There was no place to hide. Without thinking, she once again flew onto the beam and sprawled on the beam. At this time, two women dressed like palace maids walked in. They each held an empty basket in their hands. As soon as they entered, they began to pick the vegetables. These vegetables were specially transported from the south. How can we have fresh vegetables here? Palace maid A said with a smile. Palace maid B said, "Isn't that so? Our third princess loves to eat this kind of vegetables, so His Majesty has been sending people to collect these vegetables." His Majesty really dotes on the third princess. It's a pity that the third princess hasn't eaten much in the past year. I heard from the servants that the third princess has lost a lot of weight this time. Maid A sighed softly, her tone full of regret. Yes, the imperial kitchen is thinking of ways to make delicious food for the third princess. The imperial doctors are also sending in food treatment prescriptions one after another, but they are of no use to the third princess. Palace maid B shook her head, her tone also regretful. Chu Qingyan, who was lying on the roof, was thinking about how to get away, but she didn't expect to hear such news. She frowned and thought, what's wrong with this third princess? Sick? This was the first time she had heard about Jiang Yunyao apart from the gossip among the people. She had always had a good impression of Jiang Yunyao. Now, she was a little curious. Unfortunately, after the two palace maids finished picking the vegetables, they left with their baskets. Although Chu Qingyan had doubts in her heart, she didn't dare to stay for long, for fear that someone would come in later. Moreover, she couldn't let Duguqing wait for too long. Therefore, she looked around and flew out of the room, quickly heading for the imperial hospital. Chu Qingyan was very glad. When she first started learning martial arts, the earth spirit had first taught her qinggong and concealment techniques. She would be able to escape and hide in times of danger, and that was why she was able to use them now. Because the royal family of the Jiang kingdom had a small population and a large territory, the important places were concentrated. Therefore, Chu Qingyan didn't spend too much time. She quickly passed through the palace and soon arrived at the imperial hospital. At this time, the imperial hospital was busy. Chu Qingyan found a window and went in. Then she avoided people and found the pharmacy. This time, she and Duguqing had a clear division of labor. Duguqing was in charge of collecting information while she was in charge of searching for herbs in the imperial hospital. Although it was their first time entering the palace and they might not find any useful information, the Yi family had entered the palace more than once to deliver goods. They would be able to enter the palace almost every day, so they weren't in a hurry. Duguqing's main task was to befriend the palace maids and see if she could find any useful information. Her main task was to search for the ice crystal grass. This was what she had told Xiao before. Today, her first destination was the imperial hospital. The emperor of the Jiang kingdom had a hobby of searching for rare treasures and rare herbs. However, the ice crystal grass grew in a special environment. Chu Qingyan avoided the medicine cubicles and looked for special storage places or secret rooms. Before coming, she had specially looked for the wood spirit to learn some strange skills. One of them was how to find the hidden mechanism according to the layout of the room. Although the pharmacy was very big, she had a strong purpose. Therefore, she finished her search very quickly and found nothing. Chu Qingyan thought, could it be that the imperial hospital didn't only have this pharmacy? However, the herbs here were also very precious and rarely seen in the market. It was obvious that there was no other pharmacy. Chu Qingyan frowned and prepared to leave. Suddenly, she heard footsteps outside the door. There was also the sound of people talking. She couldn't escape now, so she used the same trick and flew up the beam. Once she was on the beam, people came in. Leading them were two men in court attire. One was old and the other was middle-aged. Behind them were two men who looked like eunuchs. Chu Qingyan guessed that the only person who could appear here in court attire was the imperial physician. Lord Zhang, how should we administer the medicine this time? The middle-aged imperial physician looked very distressed and asked the old imperial physician in a low voice. The elderly imperial physician stroked his beard with a worried expression. The third princess's illness is something I've never heard of or seen before. Logically speaking, if it was a common typhoid fever, she would have been cured last year. Why has it been delayed again and again until now? The middle-aged imperial physician nodded after hearing this. The symptoms are that she has caught a cold, causing her to cough incessantly. The prescription we prescribed to stop the cough and moisten the lungs has been ineffective. After taking her pulse carefully, we can't find any other cause. It's really strange. The old imperial physician shook his head and said regretfully, "Third princess is gentle and kind, but she suffered from this illness. Sigh, I will leave the palace in early spring next year and return to my hometown. I really hope that before I leave, I can see third princess healthy again. Otherwise, I don't dare to tell outsiders that I used to be an imperial physician." The middle-aged imperial physician patted the old imperial physician's shoulder. "Lord Zhang, you don't need to blame yourself. Third princess's illness is really strange. You have already delayed your retirement for nearly a year for third princess. You have already done your duty." Chu Qingyan didn't listen to what the two of them said next. She raised her eyebrows. What illness did third princess have? Why did she hear the most from the imperial kitchen to the imperial hospital? Could this be a breakthrough? Chu Qingyan thought to herself that she should have someone investigate carefully when she returned. Chapter 460. The Imperial Academy of Medicine found nothing. Chu Qingyan followed the route she came from and quickly went back. When she was about to reach the place where she parted with Duguqing, Chu Qingyan heard a faint conversation. "That little sister of mine must have eaten something bad. She's still squatting there." Hearing Duguqing's voice, Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. This reason was true, but at this time, in order to stall for time, she could only do this. Sigh, if it weren't for the recent unrest in the palace, you wouldn't have to enter the palace to deliver things at such a young age. An unfamiliar female voice sounded. It sounded like she was older than Duguqing. Chu Qingyan didn't listen carefully. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, she flipped back to the latrine. Then she straightened her sleeves, held her stomach, and slowly walked out. "Elder sister Qing, I feel terrible." She walked out weakly with the support of the wall, looking completely exhausted. Duguqing had already heard the commotion inside. She hurried forward to support Chu Qingyan, and she couldn't help but say, "I told you not to be greedy. Look at you now." "Elder sister Qing, don't talk about me. I don't even have the energy," Chu Qingyan continued to say weakly. Duguqing reached out to secretly pinch her waist, and then said to the palace maid beside her, "Then little sister will leave first. Perhaps our steward is already looking for us sisters." Chu Qingyan followed her line of sight and saw a palace maid dressed in lotus leaf color standing in front. Chu Qingyan nodded and smiled at her. That palace maid said, "Go quickly. Otherwise, it won't be good if the higher-ups don't punish you." Duguqing nodded and supported Chu Qingyan to leave. After walking for a distance, Chu Qingyan straightened her back and winked at Dugu Qing. She said with a smile, "Elder sister Dugu, I didn't expect your social skills to be so good. You chatted with another person in such a short time." Dugu Qing said disdainfully, "Do you know how many people passed by when you weren't around to ask? More than 2. That Jing Lu came to inquire twice and was sent away by me. I can hold back 10,000 men by myself." Chu Qingyan immediately reached out and hugged her arm. "Sister Dugu, you've worked hard. Did you get anything?" Hearing this, Dugu Qing poked her forehead and sneered, "I knew you only cared about those 2 herbs. Don't worry, I more or less heard some news, but the walls have ears here. Let's go back and talk about it." Chu Qingyan nodded. "Me too." By the time they arrived at the entrance of the Thousand Feathers Palace, the steward of the Yi clan had yet to come out. Chu Qingyan felt that this woman was really good at choosing fabric. Just like her best friend, every time she entered a clothing store, she would try on the first piece of clothing to the last piece of clothing. She really admired her own endurance. When Jing Lu saw the 2 of them, he nodded slightly. Not long after, the steward of the Yi clan came out, and the palace maids behind him also came out holding the fabric. The mama from earlier walked to the steward's side and said to him, "My imperial concubine really likes the fabric this time. Tomorrow, send over a few new designs. Her imperial concubine wants to pick for the crown prince and second prince. You must remember not to make any mistakes." The Yi clan's housekeeper immediately acknowledged the order and led Chu Qingyan and the others to the internal affairs department. Chu Qingyan originally thought that she could take advantage of the time when the imperial household department was inspecting the fabric to build a good relationship with the people inside and make her presence known. She did not expect that because of the matter with the Jiang country's empress, the steward of the imperial household department directly accepted all the fabric and told them to enter the palace tomorrow. Thus, the group left the palace again. Once back at the Yi residence, Chu Qingyan and Dugu Qing went straight to the study. When Xiao Su and the rest found out that Chu Qingyan was returning to the residence, they waited in the study. "Miss Chu, Miss Dugu, did you find anything?" Yiling Feng sat at one side and spoke first. Chu Qingyan took the tea from Xining and drank it in big gulps. Before she spoke, Dugu Qing had already said, "The Jiang country's palace is really big." Cough cough. Chu Qingyan choked before swallowing. Could this Dugu Qing not be so funny? What else is there besides big? Yiling Feng was already used to her way of speaking and continued to ask. Dugu Qing did not delay and said directly, The palace maids of the Jiang country's empress and the palace maids in the laundry yard heard that the Jiang country's emperor and empress are very loving. Other than working late, His Majesty usually stays in the Qinyu Palace. The empress does not have many hobbies, but she likes to grow flowers and plants. The crown prince and second prince are brothers and are respectful to each other. There has not been any news of discord. Until now, the crown prince and second prince have not taken any concubines, nor do they have any concubines. Chu Qingyan nodded. This is the peace of the imperial harem, which is the guarantee that an emperor can rule the world with peace of mind. The Jiang country's empress likes to grow flowers and plants? Xiao Su caught these words and thought for a while. Yes, I heard that there is a small garden in the Qinyu Palace, where the flowers and plants planted by the Jiang country's empress are placed. I heard that there are peonies, orchids, roses, and flowers of all seasons. Dugu Qing added. Chu Qingyan's water spirit's bright big eyes flashed slightly, and she turned to Xiao Su and said, Your Highness, do you think the ice crystal flower is in the Qinyu Palace? Xiao Su lowered his eyebrows and pondered. The conditions for cultivating the ice crystal flower are special, so it should not be in an open-air garden. But if the Jiang country's empress likes flowers and plants, maybe there is an ice cellar in her palace. Dugu Qing was stunned by Chu Qingyan's Your Highness. She glanced at the people present without leaving a trace. Could it be that little Qingyan and the others were relatives of the emperor of another country? But this seemed to have little to do with her. She spoke again. I think the possibility of the ice crystal flower being in the empress's palace is not high. What is Miss Dugu's opinion? Xiao Su asked. Dugu Qing replied, I learned from Shui Lu, the palace maid of the Jiang country's empress, that the Jiang country's empress is extremely afraid of the cold. In October of this year, the Qinyu Palace had already started to burn the Earth Dragon. And His Majesty of the Jiang country had ordered a few years ago that once winter came, the Qinyu Palace must be as warm as spring. So I think that His Majesty of the Jiang country would not allow the Qinyu Palace to be built with an ice cellar. Miss Dugu is right. Yi Lingfeng waved his paper fan and nodded. I have also heard of this matter. It should be that the Jiang country's empress caught a cold when she gave birth to the third princess, which caused the illness to take root. Until now, she is still afraid of the cold. Chu Qian nodded and said, I see. In that case, the Thousand Feathers Palace can be ruled out. The Imperial Physician Court can also be ruled out. I went to the Imperial Physician Court and searched everywhere, but I could not find a place to place the ice crystal flower. Don't worry, now we can rule out 2 palaces. Xiao Su said lightly. They did very well the first time without special training. No matter what they did it step by step. Chu Qingyan smiled sweetly at him, and then said seriously, but I heard of very strange news in the Imperial Kitchen and the Imperial Hospital. Chapter 461. What news? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and stared at her. Chu Qingyan immediately repeated the conversation she had overheard in the Imperial Hospital and the Imperial Kitchen. I overheard 2 palace maids in the Imperial Kitchen saying that the third princess had a poor appetite and had lost a lot of weight over the past year. In the Imperial Hospital, I heard that the third princess had been suffering from a cold for more than a year and had not shown any signs of improvement. The Imperial physicians were helpless. I found it very strange that the third princess had not shown up for more than a year. Was it because she was sick? But if it was really just a cold, why did it drag on for so long? The Imperial physicians in the Imperial Hospital shouldn't be the kind of people who just take a salary and do nothing. Chu Qingyan expressed her opinion, but she was very puzzled. When Yi Lingfeng heard this, he seemed to recall something. After hearing Miss Chu's words, I remembered something. Last year, not long after the third princess's annulment, His Majesty the Szechuan ordered people to announce to the world that they were looking for famous physicians. At that time, I remember that many people entered the palace with the announcement, but those physicians went in and out of the palace. Someone asked them what they were doing in the palace, but they kept their mouths shut. There were too many people who returned empty-handed, so there was no news after that. No one knew if the third princess had been cured or not. Then I thought about this matter. Was the search for famous physicians because of the third princess's illness? I think it's possible, Ethereal chimed in. Normally, typhoid can be cured in half a month to a month. For it to drag on until now, it shouldn't be as simple as typhoid. Even if it developed into tuberculosis, it would be impossible for her to live for so long. The third princess is still young, so the possibility of her contracting tuberculosis is not high. Chen Yanluo continued her analysis. Your Highness, what do you think? Chu Qingyan turned to ask after hearing this. Xiao Su frowned. There are 2 possibilities. First, the third princess's illness was misdiagnosed. Second, someone wants to murder her. Having been involved in the intrigue of the Szechuan, Xiao Su was more sensitive than the average person to sniff out things that could not be seen with the naked eye. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Don't we have Sister Yanluo and Ethereal? If we can cure the third princess's illness, can we take the opportunity to exchange the ice crystal grass with the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom? As soon as she finished speaking, Qing Yanluo's large hand covered her head. Little girl, don't think of us as the living Huato. Didn't young Master Yi say that many doctors have entered the palace after the imperial notice was posted? There must be some among them who are quite capable. If they can't cure this, I think it's very difficult. I don't want my reputation to be ruined in the Jiang Kingdom. Chu Qingyan giggled and winked at her. Sister Yanluo, you're so powerful that even the snake's kiss poison was a piece of cake for you. Perhaps the third princess's illness won't be a problem for you? Don't flatter me. It's hard to say if you haven't seen the patient. Cheng Yanluo pinched her cheeks and snorted. At this moment, Xiao Su said coldly, the third princess's illness is just like what Qingyan said. It's a breakthrough. Lingfeng, Go and check on the doctors who entered the palace back then and see if you can find out anything from them. Yi Lingfeng nodded and said leisurely, Don't worry. Although it's been so long as she's still in the city, I'll help you find her. If we can find out her symptoms, we might be able to analyze it, Ethereal said. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and said, The third princess has been ill for so long, but there hasn't been any news outside the palace. It's obvious that they don't want anyone to know. Tomorrow we still have to go to the palace to deliver the cloth. I'll see if I can find out anything about the third princess. All right. Xiao Su was relieved to see her in high spirits. At this moment, Du Qing sighed. The third princess is really unlucky. She fell ill not long after the engagement was annulled. She's really traumatized both physically and mentally. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of Tang Qingchang, the man whose engagement was annulled by Jiang Yunyao. She had only caught a glimpse of him in the restaurant that day. She felt that he was dignified and decent. However, one could never judge a book by its cover. His character was unknown. Therefore, she said to Turin, If you have the time, keep an eye on Tang Qingchang, the second son of the Tang family. Although I don't know about his entanglement with the third princess, I think it's not a big deal to investigate him from many angles. Turin nodded and said, I'll ask people to pay more attention to the Tang family. Hearing Chu Qingyan's words, Du Qing couldn't help asking, Little Qingyan, do you suspect that Tang Qingchang was humiliated by the annulment of the engagement and became a laughingstock? Is that why he tried to murder the third princess? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. She admired Du Qing's imagination. I didn't say that. It's just that we don't have enough clues now, so I want to dig up some useful information. It's not impossible that love turned into hatred. I think Tang Qingchang can also be included in the list of suspects. Cheng Yanluo touched her chin and voted for Du Qing. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but twitch the corner of her eyes. They didn't even know what was going on with the third princess's illness, but they had already started to suspect someone. It seemed that women were really talented at gossiping. They were self-taught and could even justify themselves. Before long, the meeting was over. Du Qing walked out of the study and stopped Yi Lingfeng in front of her. When he turned around, she had already jumped in front of him. She smiled and said, Brother Lingfeng, are you free this afternoon? I heard that Zhenbao Pavilion has a new batch of goods. Do you want to go take a look? Yi Lingfeng took a step back in shock at her sudden appearance. Du Qing was always so flustered. He steadied himself and looked at her. In order to disguise herself as a servant of the Yi family, she had changed from her rose-colored clothes to a light blue servant's outfit. Her long hair was tied into 2 buns, adorned with a few pearls and no other accessories. Even so, her simple outfit was still as beautiful as an immortal's, with a natural adornment that made her look naturally adorable. His gaze flickered slightly. He had to admit that he had been entranced for a moment. This feeling was very unfamiliar, unlike the feeling he had in the past when he admired beauties as if they were flowers. He immediately reined in his thoughts. Under her unwavering gaze, he lowered his eyebrows and smiled. I've been very busy recently. If Miss Dugu wants to go, you can bring a few servant girls along. Du Qing clearly felt the momentary absent-mindedness in his eyes just now, but before she could be happy, he had already regained that alienation. It was just the right amount of politeness, and Du Qing's curved lips immediately flattened. Just as she spoke, Yi Lingfeng smiled and said, I have something to do, so I'll take my leave. Miss Dugu, you can call the servants if you need anything. Without waiting for her response, he turned and left. Du Qing watched him leave and her lips curved into a self-deprecating smile. What should she do? She still couldn't move him. Chapter 462. Everyone left. Only Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su were left in the study. Chu Qingyan got up and approached the desk. She raised her fair face and looked at him with her dark eyes. Big Ice Cube, I went to the imperial palace of the Jiang Kingdom today and found something. What is it? Usually, when a little girl talked like this, she must have found something interesting. He put his hands on the desk and waited for her to speak. Chu Qingyan supported her chin with one hand and said while thinking, When I secretly investigated today, I found that although the imperial palace of the Jiang kingdom covers a large area, it also has many idol palaces. There is only one empress, no concubines, and only a few princes and princesses. It is not like other countries, where there are 3,000 beauties in the harem and many people are fighting for favor. If every country can be as strict as the emperor of the Jiang kingdom, corruption will not happen so fast, Xiao Su said without denying it. Along the way, the prosperity of the Jiang kingdom was something that Xian and the Junlan kingdom could not compare to. It was mainly due to the way the emperor of the Jiang kingdom governed the country. Generally, a large part of the reason why a country was stagnant or could not move forward was because of the imperial harem. The imperial concubines in the imperial harem basically represented super powerful parties. They restrained each other in the imperial harem, which was equivalent to the parties in the imperial court restraining disputes. The royal family of the Jiang kingdom was simple, so no one rebelled. Chu Qingyan understood the meaning of Xiao Su's words. She nodded and said jokingly, "In fact, there is another advantage for the emperor of the Jiang kingdom to do this, which is to save money. If the population is small, the expenses will be small. If the expenses are small, the national treasury will be full. If the national treasury is full, the people will live a better life. If the people live a better life, Guotai will be safe." Xiao Su smiled and praised her, which was rare for him. "What you said is very appropriate." Chu Qingyan smiled proudly, and then the smile on her face faded. "Big Ice Cube, how good would it be if everyone in the world was monogamous? There would be no struggle for power in the imperial harem and Guotai would be safe. There would be no intrigue in the imperial harem, and everything would be prosperous in the imperial harem." Xiao Su smiled faintly. "You're thinking too simply. The rule passed down by our ancestors is to have more children and more blessings. Women are born to depend on men to live. Their existence is to have more children. In the eyes of most men, they're just tools to carry on the family line. Their life and death are not worth mentioning." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan's expression changed. She placed both her hands on the table and said unhappily, "Women are not your tools for reproduction. They are also not lowly beings that you can toy with. Don't look down on people like this. Without women, the human race would have been destroyed. Big Ice Cube, I thought you were different. I didn't expect you to think the same. I was wrong about you." Xiao Su looked at her angrily and criticized her. When she finished, Xiao Su said slowly, "I was talking about most men. I didn't say that I think the same. Little fellow, even if you want to complain about injustice, you shouldn't accuse me because I am a man." Chu Qingyan blinked. The Big Ice Cube didn't seem to admit it just now. He was just stating his point of view. Could it be that she had really wronged a good person? But you are the Lord. You have 3 wives and 4 concubines. You will definitely have many sons. Chu Qingyan seemed to have found her footing and started to accuse him again. She didn't remember that she was his future princess consort. Xiao Su looked at her indignant expression and couldn't help but want to laugh. "Little fellow, did I say that I have 3 wives and 4 concubines?" Chu Qingyan didn't react to his question. I don't think so. You don't have to worry about this." He reached out to pat her head with an enigmatic smile. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. She was a bit confused. What could she be worried about? But for some reason, when she heard the Big Ice Cube say this, her heart felt inexplicably comfortable. It was as if someone had opened up her conception and governor meridians. "Go and change your clothes." Xiao Su stood up and said with a laugh when he saw her dazed expression. "Change my clothes for what?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. Xiao Su looked at her with slight disdain in his eyes. "Do you want to go shopping like this?" "Of course not. I will be treated as a servant girl." Chu Qingyan said angrily. Only after she finished speaking did she realize that Big Ice Cube was going to take her out for a walk. Xiao Su saw that her first reaction was not to go back to her room to change, but to run to the window and look around. He couldn't help but frown. "What are you doing?" "I'm looking to see if the sun will rise from the west today." Chu Qingyan replied in a serious manner. Xiao Su's eyes twitched. "I'll give you the time it takes to brew a cup of tea." "So, The person who had been looking around by the window was gone in an instant. Xiao Su rubbed his forehead. He felt a bit helpless, but a faint warmth floated in the corner of his mouth. During this period of time, the little fellow had been recuperating in her room. She must have been bored out of her wits. In addition, she went to Lan Manor a few days ago and brought back good news. In addition, she went to the Imperial Palace today to inquire about the news. Xiao Su thought that the little fellow had done so many things, so he should reward her once. His hand unconsciously reached into his sleeve. His fingers touched the warm beads, and his heart was peaceful. After leaving the study, Chu Qingyan quickly led Xining, who was outside the door, back to her room. She didn't know why her master was running so fast. Xining was panting behind her. Chu Qingyan urged, "Xining, help me take out the crescent moon phoenix tail dress. I want to wear that out." "Understood," Xining said loudly. So it was going out. No wonder her master was so excited. She immediately went to the wardrobe. While waiting for the clothes, Chu Qingyan calmed down. She thought of her conversation with the ice cube. She couldn't help but imagine. If the Sichuan emperor only married Empress Liang, then would the ice cube not have to endure so much unfair treatment since childhood? Then, would the Sichuan dynasty not have so many factions fighting? Would everything be stable and prosperous? But everything was just a hypothesis. The Sichuan emperor married Empress Liang for power. Once a man ascended and held great power, he would take back everything he didn't get before. For example, he would marry his childhood sweetheart consort Yu. The higher a person stood, the greater their ambition. They would not be satisfied with the status quo. The ancient times were not like the present, where there was democracy and freedom. There were monitoring organizations. In ancient times, the emperor was the sky, and no one dared to go against him. Chu Qingyan shook her head. She couldn't help but feel that she was thinking too much. She was just feeling unfair for the ice cube. But she thought, if the Sichuan emperor only married Empress Liang, then would she not have appeared? Everything was a cycle of cause and effect. It was all destined. She stopped thinking about it. She changed her clothes and walked towards the study. It was rare for the ice cube to invite her out. She couldn't let him wait for too long. If he waited for too long, he would become arrogant and her trip would be ruined. Chapter 463. After meeting up with Xiao Su in the study, Xiao Su brought Turin, while Chu Qingyan brought Xining and Jean Exin. The five of them went out together. After being bored for a few days, Chu Qingyan became lively as soon as she arrived at the downtown area. "Big ice cube, I want this one. Big ice cube, I want that one. This one, that one is also not bad." Once in the crowd, Chu Qingyan turned into a shopping maniac and bought whatever she saw. Xiao Su followed behind her and only needed to pay. Xiao Su looked at the little fellow who was shuttling between the vendors like a fish in water. In a trance, he felt that this was the innocent and unaffected look that a 10-year-old child should have. Ever since they left Sichuan, he rarely saw her so childish, and a touch of guilt emerged in his heart. Chu Qingyan didn't really want to buy anything, but she felt that Big Ice Cube was willing to accompany her because he felt that she had worked hard during this period of time, so he wanted to compensate her. In this case, in order to reassure Big Ice Cube, she let loose and became a nouveau riche for once. Look, she had contracted the entire street. It was just a pity that as bodyguards, Turin and Jean Exin were all carrying things that she had bought. When they were tired of shopping, the group found a restaurant to rest. Chu Qingyan looked at the things piled up on the chair with a satisfied look on her face. However, she didn't buy anything expensive. They were all snacks and trinkets that didn't cost much. They were not even as expensive as a dish in this restaurant. "Order whatever you want to eat." Xiao Su saw her drooling at the food on the table next to them, so he coughed lightly and reminded her. He was a little disappointed that she didn't live up to his expectations. Chu Qingyan immediately called for the waiter and ordered all the signature dishes. Then, she eagerly waited for the dishes to be served. Today, she had gone to the palace and was tormented for an entire day. She had used up a lot of her physical strength. In addition, she had gone shopping just now. She was almost half dead. It was said that girls love to go shopping, but she didn't think so. She only felt that going shopping for nothing would kill her. In the tea house opposite the restaurant, a purplish figure could be vaguely seen leaning against the windowsill. "Young master, aren't you here to look for Miss Chu? Why aren't you showing yourself?" Xuanqizimo looked at the person below with a puzzled expression. Today, his master had received news that Miss Chu had left the manor and had brought him out. However, he had only silently followed along the entire way and had not taken the initiative to approach. This made him very confused. "Didn't you see Xiao Su beside her? Your master doesn't want to expose himself so early." Higashio Motetsu gave him a sideways glance. He really didn't have good eyesight. Xuanqizimo replied, "Master, has Xiao Su seen you before? How did he recognize you?" "It's better to be safe than sorry. Besides, he knows that the lass has recovered from her injuries. It doesn't matter whether he sees her or not." Higashio Motetsu's gaze fell on the girl who was acting coquettishly towards Xiao Su. A trace of jealousy appeared in his eyes. The lass had never treated him like this before. Higashio Motetsu was very dissatisfied with Chu Qingyan's differential treatment. At this time, Xuanqizimo, who didn't know what his young master was thinking, hesitantly said, "That's right, master. The spies reported that the palace lord flew into a rage at the palace gates because you didn't bid for the ginseng fruit. It caused quite a big commotion." When Higashio Motetsu heard this, he sneered, "That ginseng fruit costs 10,000 taels per bite. This young master can't afford it. Who knows how much money the Moon Palace has spent on that person over the years? Father still hasn't learned his lesson and actually wants to buy that fruit for her. He's so stubborn. There's no need to pay attention to him." Xuanqizimo wanted to say something else, to tell his young master not to be angry with the palace lord. However, when he saw the mocking expression on his master's face, he fell silent. In the Moon Palace, who didn't know that the palace lord and the young palace lord often fell out with each other, or that they were in a cold war? Now that the young palace lord had grown up, she didn't spend much time in the Moon Palace. However, their every move was still closely watched by the entire Moon Palace. Who didn't wish for the palace lord and the young palace lord to reconcile as soon as possible? In the future, the Moon Palace would still have to be handed over to the young palace lord. For the next month, don't tell this young master anything about the old man. What I don't hear won't hurt me," Higashio Motetsu ordered coldly as he reached out to close the window. The father and son who used to be so close were now strangers. Xuanqizimo sighed softly. It really made one sigh. In the restaurant, Xiao Su raised his head as if he sensed something. In the opposite tea house, the window was already closed, and he couldn't see the people inside. The window beside it was wide open, and they were ordinary people. There was nothing suspicious about them. "Big Ice Cube, what are you looking at? Do you want to drink some tea?" Chu Qingyan turned to look at the opposite side of the road and saw a tea house. She couldn't help but ask. "No need. Don't look around when you're eating," Xiao Su said calmly. Chu Qingyan shrugged her shoulders and continued eating her meal. "Big Ice Cube, I'm starting to miss Huang Yi's cooking. It's already been a few months. I wonder if everything in the manor is still all right?" Chu Qingyan took a sip of soup and sighed. Although she had only been in the capital for half a year and hadn't made many friends, her days in the King of England's manor had been the happiest. There had been good food and Big Ice Cube. Her days had been relaxed and she hadn't had to worry about anything. Perhaps she would never be able to return to those days in this lifetime. Whether or not Big Ice Cube returned to the Sichuan, it would never happen again. The most helpless thing in life was when things remained the same, but people changed. "In the future, I'll take you to eat all over Jiangnan." Xiao Su couldn't help but smile when he saw her scrunched-up face, which vividly illustrated what a bun face looked like. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. "You'll keep your word?" "A gentleman's word is as good as a whip." Xiao Su expressed his displeasure at her doubts. "Good." Chu Qingyan continued to eat her meal in satisfaction. She found that Big Ice Cube was becoming more and more easy to talk to. It seemed like her ice cube transformation had been very successful. It was a pity that Chu Qingyan could not hear the thoughts of Hualing and the others. Master was only special to the little princess and was always cold and scorching to them. Gentle and soft? Was it an illusion? Caring about their well-being? Was it an illusion? Considerate? Was it an illusion? They had accompanied their master for so many years, but they couldn't compare to the little princess who had accompanied him for less than a year. They felt like they were failures. How could Chu Qingyan know about Hua Ling and the others' complaints? If she was lucky enough to hear it, Chu Qingyan would not be outdone. In this world, other than first come, first served, there were 5 other words, which was that the latecomer caught up. The dishes they ordered were all famous in the capital. Chu Qingyan was simply eating her fill. When she was 70 to 80% full, she was prepared to put down her chopsticks and drink some tea to get rid of the grease. But at this time, she heard the waiter's voice. "Second young Master Tang, it's been a long time since you came to our store. Do you want to drink or eat?" The waiter politely asked. "Second young Master Tang?" Tang Qingcheng. Chu Qingyan's hand holding the teacup stopped, and she turned to look at the voice. Chapter 464. He was dressed in a white robe, his black hair flowing in the wind, one black and one white, making him look upright and serious. A light green belt was wrapped around his waist, and he wore white deerskin boots. His skin was as white as jade, and because of this, his handsome features looked particularly three-dimensional. His lips were red and his teeth were white, but he did not look weak like a jade-faced scholar. Instead, his body was sturdy, and his footsteps were steady and powerful. However, his eyelids were lowered, concealing the expression in his eyes. His expression was very indifferent and emotionless, giving people a feeling that he was not easy to approach. However, Chu Qingyan felt that this person's coldness was deliberate. It was as if he was trying to avoid unnecessary trouble, unlike her big ice cube. That coldness was something that had been accumulated through tens of battles. From the inside out, just one look from him was enough to turn a person from the warm spring to the cold winter, chilling them to the bone. Same as before, a pot of wine and 2 side dishes. Although his voice was low, his pronunciation was perfect, making people feel comfortable listening to him. After Tang Qingchang finished ordering, his gaze swept across the hall, and he found a seat in a corner where he would not be easily disturbed by others. Chu Qingyan could not help but recall that she and Higashio Motetsu had also met him here previously. At that time, he had also asked for a pot of wine, and then poured himself a cup of wine, as if no one else was around. She felt that it was very strange. Why did such an aristocratic family's eldest young master always come here to drink? Moreover, he was alone? Chu Qingyan could not figure it out, so she turned to tell the person beside her. Drinking is either to liven things up or to drown one's sorrows. Which do you think he is? Xiao Su always hit the nail on the head. Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin. Liven things up is definitely impossible. Look at him sitting there, cold and indifferent. He doesn't look happy at all, so he can only drown his sorrows. But as the son of the Prime Minister, is there anything to be sorrowful about? Xiao Su put down his chopsticks, looked at her face full of interest and suggested, "You can ask someone." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. "Big Ice Cube, you always wake me up with your words." After praising him, she called the waiter over and asked him with a confused look on her face, "Waiter, do you know why the brother in white sitting over there always drinks alone? I've seen him a few times, and I'm curious about him." As she spoke, she stuffed the money bag handed over by Turin into the waiter's hand. The waiter weighed the money bag and looked happy. He immediately lowered his voice and said, "The man in white is the second legitimate son of the Prime Minister of the Jiang Kingdom. He is the second young Master Tang, Tang Qingsheng. You should have heard that the third princess broke off the engagement, right?" Chu Qingyan nodded cooperatively. "I've heard of it." The waiter continued, "The one who broke off the engagement and became the prince consort is the second young Master Tang. There are many different reasons for breaking off the engagement, and ordinary people like us don't know. But after 1 or 2 months, the second young Master Tang often came to our restaurant. He would sit there for most of the day with a pot of wine and 2 dishes. In the beginning, we attracted a lot of business for our restaurant. Because second young Master Tang is the most handsome man in the imperial capital, many girls specially came to our restaurant to see him. Unfortunately, second young Master Tang has always ignored them. His cold appearance scared many girls away. The waiter's words were full of regret, as if he had lost a lot of business. Seeing that he had digressed from the topic, Chu Qingyan immediately stopped him from talking about regret and pulled him back to the topic. Then do you know why the second young Master Tang often comes to your restaurant? Could it be that his family doesn't give him enough food and clothes? After the waiter finished sighing, he heard Chu Qingyan's question and immediately waved his hand. Although the second young Master Tang is the second son, Prime Minister Tang dotes on him like a treasure. How could he be mistreated? Speaking of the second young Master Tang coming to our restaurant for more than a year, I'm not very clear. But some people say that it's because the third princess used to like the treasure pavilion diagonally opposite our restaurant. She often went out of the palace to buy gold and silver jewelry, so the second young Master Tang often sat here and waited for the third princess to appear. Treasure pavilion? Chu Qingyan turned her head and looked outside. Indeed, there was a tall and big treasure pavilion near the opposite tea house. Well, I have to go to work. If you need anything, please feel free to call me. The waiter threw the rag over his shoulder and immediately went to greet the new customer. Chu Qingyan turned to look at Tang Qingchang and found that although he was drinking, his eyes were indeed on the opposite side. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but frown. If he really liked her, why didn't he take the initiative to find her? Instead, he waited here for her. What was the use? Master, Tang Qingchang didn't go out a few days ago. I didn't have time to receive the news that he came to the restaurant today. Turin apologized. Well, investigate the reason why Tang Qingchang appeared here. Seeing that the little fellow seemed to be very concerned about this matter, Xiao Su ordered. Yes, Turin answered. Chu Qingyan ate the rice in her bowl. After he finished his order, she said, Big ice cube, I think the waiter's words may be somewhat true. Tang Qingchang is so strange. Why does he waste time waiting here? Why don't we go directly to Jiang Yunyao and make it clear? I think there's something fishy about the broken engagement back then. Not everyone has the courage to do so. Xiao Su said indifferently. He glanced at her and pointed at the rice in her bowl. It's not good to get used to leftovers. She had eaten too much just now and couldn't eat anymore. But under the pressure of the big ice cube, she obediently picked up the chopsticks and ate the rice painfully. I think a man must have the courage to face his bleak life and the face that he has left behind. Only then can he not care about trifles and win the beauty back. Oh! Xiao Su was surprised by her sudden words. He stroked his chin and subconsciously remembered it in his heart. After a long time, when Chu Qingyan was irritated by a certain someone, she was quickly coaxed back. She couldn't help but wonder, you dared to admit your mistake in front of your subordinates. It's not like you. A certain someone replied, a man must have the courage to face his bleak life and the face that he has left behind. Only then can he not care about trifles and win the beauty back. Chu Qingyan felt that these words were very pleasant to hear, and her hair was smoothed out. However, she felt that these words were somewhat familiar, as if she had heard them somewhere before. Unfortunately, before she could think clearly, she was pressed into the red blanket by a certain someone. The red quilt was rolled over and the two lovers' necks were intertwined. It was as beautiful as a painting. The group sat for a while longer and saw Tang Qingchang pay the bill and get up to leave. Tang Qingchang had just walked to the door of the restaurant when a beggar bumped into his leg. The beggar didn't manage to control his strength and fell to the ground. The little beggar grimaced in pain. It was obvious that he had suffered some scratches. Perhaps it was because he saw that the person he bumped into was a well-dressed young master. The little beggar was so scared that he couldn't even speak clearly. I'm sorry. Chu Qingyan saw this scene and was very curious about how Tang Qingchang would deal with it. Chapter 465. They were about to leave, but because Chu Qingyan wanted to watch a good show, Xiao Su allowed her to leave. Chu Qingyan propped up her chin and looked out the door, wondering how Tang Qingchang would deal with the situation. He was wearing a snow-white brocade robe and his knees had been dirted by the beggar. He looked a little disheveled. Outside the door, Tang Qingchang looked at the beggar who was staring at him in horror. He did not look down at his robe, but walked up to him. The beggar looked at the approaching man and was so frightened that tears almost fell from his eyes. He put his palms together and begged for mercy. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Please be magnanimous and forgive me." Chu Qingyan saw this shocking scene. Tang Qingchang bent down and reached out to the beggar, then helped him up easily. Before the beggar could react, Tang Qingchang took out a money pouch from his sleeve and placed it in the beggar's broken bowl. Without a word, he left with his hands clasped behind his back. Chu Qingyan's jaw almost dropped. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with admiration when he saw this. "Big Ice Cube, I think Tang Qingchang is a good person." Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. Just now, he didn't care about the stains on his clothes at all. When he reached out to help the little beggar up, he didn't hesitate at all. He didn't care that the little beggar was dirty all over. What's more, he took out the money bag in one breath. Before they could react, he had already left. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He was kind and beautiful. Chu Qingyan thought that such a man was rare. She wondered what the third princess would be like. She was looking forward to meeting Jiang Yunyao. Back then, they were the legendary couple in the imperial capital. She was very curious. After paying the money, the group headed back to the Yi residence. Along the way, they stopped and looked at the traffic and did not feel bored. When they returned to the Yi residence, Chu Qingyan distributed the things she bought to everyone, especially the food. Her father, Dugu Qing and Qing Yanluo shared it among themselves. After dinner, Chu Qingyan looked at a map of the Jiang Kingdom's imperial palace in her room. Then she took out a red pen and drew circles on it. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Xining went to open it. "First Old Master Chu, first Madam Chu." Xining bowed and stepped aside to let them in. When Chu Qingyan heard that it was her father and mother, she immediately stood up to greet them. "Father, mother, why are you here so late at night? It's too cold. Is there anything you can't say during the day? Dan Yang said she misses you." Mr. Chu was so cold that he rubbed his hands together. Even his nose had turned red from the cold. It was very cold at night in Jiang country. It was much colder than during the day. Chu Qingyan ordered Xining to pass a heater to her father. She then held her mother's hand and helped her warm it up. "Mother, didn't we just have dinner together in the day? Are you missing me already?" Chu Qingyan's mother smiled. "There were too many people during the day. You were also busy. I didn't want to disturb you." "Mother, what are you saying? If you have something to say, just say it. What are you talking about?" Chu Qingyan couldn't help but chide her. She acted like a little girl. Chu Qingyan's mother looked at her daughter who was acting coquettishly in front of her. She felt that this was how a little girl should behave. She had seen her daughter behave properly during the day. When she talked with the King of England and the others, she acted like a little adult. As a mother, she was both happy and worried. She was happy that her daughter was smart and quick-witted. She was worried that her daughter was shouldering a responsibility that was beyond her age at such a young age. Her heart ached. "I heard that you're going to the palace tomorrow?" Chu Qingyan's mother asked worriedly. Chu Qingyan remembered that she didn't tell her mother that she was going to the palace. Someone must have let it slip. Judging from her mother's expression, she must be worried about her and came to look for her in the middle of the night. She hurriedly comforted her. "Mother, this is my second time entering the palace as a servant of the Yi family. It won't be a problem. With the Yi family's steward around, nothing will happen to me." Chu Qingyan's mother used to be a daughter of a wealthy family in the Sichuan capital. Before she got married, she often attended the palace's talent banquets. There were many rules in the palace. She knew this very well. Kai, it's not that mother likes to nag. It's just that you're still young. I don't trust you to do these things. His Royal Highness has many capable people under him. Can they do it instead?" However, no matter how smart and mature her daughter was, she was still a child in her mother's eyes. A mother would worry about a child traveling thousands of miles, not to mention going to the most dangerous place in the country. Chu Qingyan knew that her mother didn't want her to take the risk. She told her mother about the palace's rules and why His Highness's people couldn't be used. She then explained her advantages. "Mother, I've learned a lot along the way with His Highness. My martial arts aren't weak and I'm smart. It's time for me to go out and broaden my horizons. Otherwise, everything will just be theory. Mother, father used to be a general. As the saying goes, a general will never have a dog's son. You should trust me. That's right. Never have a dog's son. Kai Kai, your father's tiger son. Chu Qingyan's father interjected as he warmed his hands. Chu Qingyan's mother sighed. But Kai Kai, you're a girl. You're different from boys. How can you be expected of a boy? Mother, how can a girl be inferior to a boy? We girls can also make a name for ourselves. Chu Qingyan pretended to be displeased. Chu Qingyan's father nodded his head vigorously. Kai Kai can make a name for herself. Kai Kai is better than a man. She's just a little bit worse than a son-in-law. Chu Qingyan made a face at her father. She had had enough of him praising the ice cube every time. Chu Qingyan's mother was at a loss for words. In the end, Chu Qingyan's mother gave in. She patted her daughter's hand and exhorted, "No matter what happens, you have to protect yourself. If there's any danger, you have to run away immediately." Chu Qingyan was amused by her mother's words. When she sent her mother out, Chu Qingyan reached out and hugged the person she saw the moment she opened her eyes. She was also the person who gave her the most warmth. She comforted, "Mother, Kai Kai is already growing up. You don't have to worry. Trust me." Chu Qingyan's mother was a little stunned by her daughter's sudden hug. But when she heard her daughter's words, her eyes shone with deep affection. Mother has always believed that our Kai Kai is the best. When Chu Qingyan's father saw the mother and daughter hugging each other, he opened his arms and moved closer. Me do. After sending her parents off, Chu Qingyan returned to her seat and saw Xining's red eyes. "What's wrong? Are you homesick?" Chu Qingyan asked with concern. Xining is touched. "Master's relationship with your family is very good. It's so good that it makes others envious." Xining rubbed her eyes and said, "Because parents always do their best to give the best to their children. The only thing we can do is to do our best to be filial to them when we grow old. The tree wants to be quiet, but the wind won't stop. The child wants to be raised, but the parents are no longer around. Don't regret it for life." Chu Qingyan smiled gently and said with a sigh, "Master is right." Xining nodded in agreement. Chapter 466. The next day, Chu Qingyan got up early in the morning and prepared to enter the palace. Just as she was washing up, a servant came to report that Duguqing was not feeling well. She had a high fever last night and only recovered this morning. She could not enter the palace with them. Chu Qingyan was shocked. Duguqing was fine yesterday. How did she fall ill all of a sudden? She wanted to visit Duguqing, but it was already time for the assembly. She could only visit Duguqing after leaving the palace. Without Duguqing, their plan would be ruined. Chu Qingyan felt uneasy as she sat in the Yi family's carriage. It seemed that she could only act according to the situation. When they arrived at the palace gates, the sky was just beginning to brighten. This time, they had to go to the Imperial Household Department first to hand over the cloth that Empress Jiang had requested. Then, they would bring the new clothes to Qianyu Palace for Empress Jiang to choose. Without Duguqing's protection, Chu Qingyan decided to follow the crowd in front of everyone. She decided to sneak away on the way to Qianyu Palace. After spending nearly 2 hours in the Imperial Household Department, everyone carried the cloth that Empress Jiang had requested for men and headed to Qianyu Palace. Chu Qingyan was hugging a roll of navy blue cloth. When she turned a corner, she suddenly hugged her stomach and cried out in pain. The Yi family's steward was Yi Lingfeng's confidant. When they were in the carriage, Chu Qingyan had already told him of her intentions. So when Chu Qingyan repeated her actions, the Yi family's steward said to the eunuch who was leading the way, "My little girl doesn't know any better. She's probably having a stomachache. Can you let her go and take care of it first?" The eunuch was in a difficult position. The empress has already woken up. We can't delay. Chu Qingyan immediately said, "Little Yen knows where the toilet is. Let's go first. Little Yen will be there soon. Is that okay?" The little eunuch stared at Chu Qingyan, this little girl. Her face was as fair as jade, and when she frowned, it caused him to feel pity for her. Go. Go to the Thousand Feathers Palace as soon as possible. If not, no one will be able to bear the responsibility if you cause trouble. Chu Qingyan thanked him again and again. Then, holding the cloth, she ran away with a smile on her face. The little eunuch shook his head and said with a smile, "Looks like it's really quite urgent. Let's hurry up and not let the Empress wait too long." The group continued onward. Chu Qingyan hugged the cloth and quickly walked forward. This time, her goal was very clear. It was Jiang Yunyao's palace, Yaoyun Palace. Just by hearing the name of the palace, one could tell how important Jiang Yunyao was to His Majesty. Along the way, Chu Qingyan met people and said that she was here to deliver the cloth to the Empress. However, she got lost and would walk back by herself later. The imperial palace of Jiang country was tight on the outside but loose on the inside. Most of their energy was focused on guarding the palace. At the first checkpoint, they were strictly interrogated. Therefore, in the inner palace, they were relatively relaxed. Except for the main palaces, such as the Imperial Study, Thousand Feathers Palace, Crown Prince's Palace, the second Prince's Jinyun Palace, and the third Princess Yaoyun Palace, the other palaces were not very tightly guarded. Chu Qingyan smoothly arrived outside Yaoyun Palace. She hid on the roof of a small palace in front of her and stared at Yaoyun Palace. Although it was one of the 5 major palaces in the Imperial Palace, this Yaoyun Palace did not look as luxurious as its reputation. Its appearance looked very simple, as if it had settled down for hundreds of years. It was not stunning at first glance, but only a little bit of spontaneously arising awe. Chu Qingyan was a little curious. What kind of temperament did Jiang Yunyao have to be able to live in such a palace? Gentle and generous, that was her first impression before she saw her in person. Or maybe she was kind and gentle. When she was lost in thought, she suddenly heard the sound of the closed palace door being opened. She immediately held her breath and saw a few women coming out from behind the door. The woman in the lead seemed to be somewhat familiar. She took a closer look. Wasn't she the Princess Ning that she met yesterday? Why did she see her twice when she entered the palace? Chu Qingyan patted her forehead. Yesterday, she forgot to ask Turin to check the background of this Princess Ning. She could walk freely in the Imperial Palace, so her identity was not bad. Forget it. She would talk about it when she went back today. She was able to spend hundreds of thousands of taels in Lan Manor, so she should not be underestimated. Because she was far away, she did not know what they were talking about. She could only wait for them to leave and then find an opportunity to sneak into Yaoyun Palace. At this time, Jiang Yutong was talking to Jiang Yunyao's personal maid, Ryue. Sister Yao's health has not improved. The weather has been too cold recently. Don't catch a cold. It will be better to put a heater in the room. Ryue said gratefully, "Thank you for reminding me, Princess Ning. I will pay more attention. Thank you for your concern over the past year and for visiting my master from time to time." "Ryue, don't say that. Sister Yao is my closest sister since childhood. Now she is sick. How can I just sit by and do nothing? I just pity her for being tortured by the disease. She hasn't recovered yet. Every time I see her in pain, it's like a knife stabbing my heart." Jiang Yutong's face was full of grief, as if she had experienced it herself. Hearing this, Ryue felt grateful again. When Jiang Yutong left Yaoyun Palace, the sadness on her face disappeared in a blink of an eye. She sneered, "Master is stupid and so are the servants. You are all a group of idiots. How dare you fight with me? You really overestimate yourself." After that, Jiang Yutong left leisurely. Although she didn't know what they were talking about, Chu Qingyan's eyesight had improved since her martial arts improved last time. At first, they were about to cry, but after they left, Princess Ning changed her face in the blink of an eye. She was as malicious as a poisonous scorpion. Chu Qingyan shook her head. She was really one person in front of others and another in private. It was better to stay away from such a person. When Yaoyun Palace was quiet again, Chu Qingyan turned over and landed on the ground. She walked a few steps and wanted to go in from the side door on the other side, because there was a tall tree there. She could sneak into the hall. Unfortunately, she forgot that she was still holding a piece of cloth in her hand, which hindered her action. Because the cloth was too long, if she climbed the tree, her whereabouts would be exposed. At this time, she didn't know whether to throw it or not. Just when she was hesitating, suddenly a cold shout came. "Who is there?" Chu Qingyan's face changed. She was finished. She was discovered. She pursed her lips and made a prompt decision to turn around. Sure enough, there was a group of imperial guards standing behind her. "Little Yen was here to deliver cloth to the Empress today, but I got lost after going to the toilet. I couldn't find the Thousand Feathers Palace anymore, and I ended up here by accident. Lord Official, please take a look." Chu Qingyan immediately gave in, and she looked like a frightened deer with tears in her eyes. "Whether you are lost or intentional, you are not allowed to enter Yaoyuan Palace without permission. Guards, take her away first," the leader of the Imperial Guards said with a straight face. Chu Qingyan clenched her fists. She didn't expect to kick such a hard stone. What should she do now? If she fell into their hands, she was afraid that her identity would be exposed and it would implicate Big Ice Cube and E family. "Hold on." A voice that sounded like a sweet rain suddenly came. Chapter 467. This voice seemed to be separated by thousands of layers of clouds, making it difficult to hear clearly. But the crisp sound of the pagoda bell gradually approached. It sounded familiar. A person's face slowly appeared in her mind. A youth in white with a brocade belt, with a compassionate gaze, and a holiness that could only be seen from afar and not touched. She found it hard to believe. Why was he here? As if fate wanted to verify this impossibility, when she turned around, she saw the person who seemed to be walking in the moonlight, with a bright red cinnabar dot on his forehead. "Quack? Oh no, Great Master?" Chu Qingyan blurted out, but immediately clenched her teeth and corrected herself. Hearing Chu Qingyan's summons, the guard captain was puzzled. Could it be that the two knew each other? The guard captain didn't think much of it. He stepped forward and bowed to Su Jian. "Greetings, Great Master. What instructions do you have for me?" Su Jian walked in front of Chu Qingyan, his clothes spotless. Then, he clasped his hands together and turned to the guard captain. This poor monk knows this young benefactor. Could the guard captain not pursue the matter of her getting lost? The person in front of him was a holy monk that His Majesty had spent a lot of effort to invite from elsewhere. The guard captain didn't dare to offend him, but it was his duty. This subordinate dares not disobey Great Master's orders. But this young lady is indeed suspicious. Although she got lost, she couldn't have walked near Her Royal Highness the Third Princess's palace. When Chu Qingyan saw this person's respectful attitude toward Su Jian, she immediately straightened her back and pouted at the guard captain. Full of grievances, she defended herself. "Little Yen just followed Great Master's directions and walked here. I didn't expect Great Master to have the same poor sense of direction as Little Yen." When the guard captain heard this, he immediately turned to look at Great Master Su Jian, only to see the Great Master with his eyes closed and chanting. He couldn't ask Great Master if he had given the wrong directions. Otherwise, he would be offended if he hurt Great Master's reputation. The guard captain cupped his hands and said, "Since Great Master has vouched for me, this subordinate will not pursue the matter. This subordinate will take his leave." With that, the guard captain led his men away in orderly steps. Seeing that they were out of danger, Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief. She turned to look at the person beside her and recovered her usual smile. "Master, monks don't lie. Did you break your precepts just now?" Su Jian opened his eyes. There was a smile in his eyes, but there was no sadness or joy. This penniless monk did not admit to anything just now. Everything was just that patron's conjecture. This penniless monk just did not correct it. Chu Qingyan shrugged. "I realize that even though I haven't seen you for a long time, your eloquence hasn't improved." Su Jian faintly smiled. "Long time no see. Benefactor Chu has grown much taller." Chu Qingyan accepted his compliment generously. "Great Master, thank you for saving me just now." Chu Qingyan bowed slightly as she expressed her gratitude in a natural and sincere manner. "Almsgiver Chu, there's no need to be so polite." Su Jian returned the gesture. Chu Qingyan hugged the cloth and followed Su Jian to a deserted palace wall. Why did Master bring me here? Chu Qingyan asked curiously. This penniless monk felt that benefactor Chu must have a lot of questions to ask, so this penniless monk found a place where no one would disturb us. Su Jian replied with a faint smile. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. This person's guess was really accurate. She did have a lot of questions to ask, but she couldn't bring herself to ask earlier. Now that he brought them up himself, she wouldn't hold back. Master Su Jian, why did you appear in the Jiang Kingdom's imperial palace? As soon as this question came out, Chu Qingyan immediately thought of the answer. This was because she recalled the news she had heard in the tea house. That mysterious senior monk was most likely this person in front of her. Guessing was one thing, but confirming it was another. A few months ago, this penniless monk was invited by the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom to chant sutras and exorcise evil spirits, Su Jian said with a faint smile, not hiding anything. Chant sutras and exorcise evil spirits? Exorcise evil spirits? Why does it sound like a Taoist priest who performs rituals? Chu Qingyan touched her nose. She couldn't be blamed for thinking this way because this was how it was portrayed on TV. Su Jian didn't mind her disrespectful words and explained, the Buddha's teachings are in the language. Those who hear it will be enlightened, and they can prove their Tao. All laws are illusory. The Buddha has supernatural powers, and he can use secret curses to change the real and the fake. The scriptures of the Buddha are only about laws and curses. Monks and nuns who have cultivated and learned must follow the scriptures and follow the scriptures. You must. Okay. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to interrupt his long speech. Although she knew a little about Buddhism, such a long speech made her dizzy. Su Jian wasn't displeased by her interruption. He put his palms together as usual and chanted Amitabha. Master, I have nothing else to ask. I have something important to do now, so I'll leave first. If we meet again, we can talk about the old days. Chu Qingyan felt that if she delayed any longer, today's trip would be ruined. Ignoring the doubts in her heart, she wanted to leave. Su Jian said, Almsgiver Chu, don't be impulsive. Yaoyuan Palace isn't a place you can enter as you wish. The security inside is even stricter than outside. Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks. It wasn't because she couldn't enter Yaoyuan Palace, but because he was familiar with it. How do you know? Seeing the deep doubts in Chu Qingyan's eyes, Su Jian still had a faint smile on his face. In fact, I've been staying in Yaoyuan Palace reciting sutras and Buddhist scriptures for the third princess to sleep peacefully. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. She had taken the risk to sneak into Yaoyuan Palace to find out about Jiang Yunyao's condition. Then she could go back and describe it to Yen Luo and Ethereal to find out what the cause was. Now that the person in the know was right in front of her, Chu Qingyan seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw. She asked excitedly, Then does Master know about the third princess's condition? She's been in a coma for a long time, and she wakes up less and less frequently. She coughs with blood in her coughs, and her face is pale and bloodless. As for other symptoms, I don't know. He wasn't a doctor, so he described it based on the surface. Chu Qingyan was overjoyed. Perhaps she wouldn't have been able to find out this information even if she had made this trip. Master Su Jian, thank you so much. Chu Qingyan beamed with joy. Looking at her innocent smile, Su Jian curved his lips into a smile. You're welcome. After not seeing her for a few months, she had really grown up a lot. Not only her height, but even the way she spoke and acted had matured. Time could destroy a person, but it could also make a person. Su Jian didn't know how far she would go in the future as she continued to grow. He looked forward to that day's arrival, but he also hoped that it would come later. He couldn't explain the reason behind it. Just as he was deep in thought, the person in front of him suddenly put on a guarded expression. That's not right. Why are you telling me this? Moreover, you should already know about our meeting in Sichuan. When it happened, you weren't invited to the Jiang Kingdom, right? But you don't seem at all surprised that I'm here. Chu Qingyan looked at him with a frown. She didn't believe that there was such a coincidence in this world that they would meet by chance in the Jiang Kingdom. Chapter 468. Su Jian couldn't help but find it funny when he saw her so guarded. She was still as alert as ever. Unfortunately, she was disappointed. He didn't have any ulterior motives. This penniless monk lives outside of the secular world. The conflicts and hidden struggles of the mortal world have nothing to do with this penniless monk, so almsgiver Chu need not worry. This penniless monk is not a talkative person. Whether you are in Sichuan Kingdom or Jiang Kingdom, it makes no difference to this penniless monk. Su Jian smiled at her. He spoke at a steady pace, not at all affected by her questioning. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes at him. Although she felt that he should be telling the truth, she felt that she couldn't believe him so easily because she still had other considerations. Then let me ask you, why did you tell me about the third princess without hiding anything? Chu Qingyan asked again. The green monk's robes fluttered even though there was no wind. The beautiful figure of the plum blossom behind him couldn't compare to the cinnabar between his eyebrows. He opened his mouth slightly, and his voice seemed to come from beyond the 9 heavens. It was beautiful and full of mystery. Because you need it. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Although she didn't want to admit it, the person in front of her always gave her the illusion that he could see through everything. She didn't like this feeling. She looked up and stared at him. What do you mean by we need it? What do we need? A chance to live, Su Jian answered truthfully. Su Jian answered truthfully. He could feel her dislike for him. He didn't know what he had done to offend her. Every time he saw her, she would raise her thorns and treat him with caution. He had been in this world for so many years, but this was the first time he had met such a girl. She was soft on the outside but hard on the inside. She was kind but had thorns. The words she said could be disgraceful, but they could also be full of reason, leaving you speechless and unable to defend yourself. She was not restricted by the rules of the world. She was like a bird that came from beyond the heavens. Her eyes were veiled, and you couldn't see through her. This was a strange girl. Su Jian said to himself in his heart. The moment he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan's eyes widened. This person always had a benevolent look on his face as he said things that would shock people to death. How do you know? Chu Qingyan asked in surprise. The news of Big Ice being poisoned had not spread. At most, only the instigators knew. Even the Sichuan emperor only announced that Big Ice's whereabouts were unknown. But from Su Jian's words, could it be that Big Ice being poisoned was no longer a secret? If that was the case and even an outsider like Su Jian knew about it, then wouldn't their whereabouts in the Jiang Kingdom be exposed? Chu Qingyan was terrified. But she didn't show it. Although Chu Qingyan did not say it out loud, Su Jian could still sense her emotions from her tone. Su Jian knew that she had misunderstood. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief. People could really scare people to death. She felt that she would be scared to death a few times each time. But what did he mean by, according to the Buddha's instructions? What did the Buddha tell you? Chu Qingyan didn't believe him, but she couldn't help but ask. Heaven's secrets must not be revealed. Su Jian chanted Amitabha after he finished speaking. Chu Qingyan cursed silently in her heart. He was always deliberately mystifying. What else could he be if he wasn't a great swindler? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes and asked, Since the Buddha is so powerful, can you help me ask which palace the ice crystal flower is in? This Voidwalker showed a troubled expression. Chu Qingyan took a step back. Why don't you ask the Buddha why the third princess is bedridden? Is there a secret behind it? Su Jian found it funny. Everything is predestined. I don't understand. Even if I know, I can't reveal it. I can only say that it's up to you. Chu Qingyan's face fell. She looked deceived. What do you mean by the Buddha's instructions? It's all a lie. Didn't they say that the Buddha is merciful? Her Highness has been cautious and conscientious for so many years, protecting the country and accumulating so much merit. But in the end, her life is in danger. Why doesn't the Buddha take pity on her? Why doesn't the Buddha save the people who should be saved? Chu Qingyan's question didn't make Su Jian's expression change. His eyes were clear as he said earnestly, His Royal Highness protected the country and saved the people from disaster. This is a fact. But it's also a fact that his hands are stained with blood. There are conflicts between countries, and there are friends and foes between citizens. However, in Buddhism, all beings are equal. Therefore, His Highness King Ing not only has redemption in his hands, but also slaughter. His merits can only offset his faults. Chu Qingyan admitted that what he said made sense, but she didn't want to be at a disadvantage in front of him. Even if what you said makes sense, there are 3 things a person can't choose when they are born into this world. One of them is their parents. He was born into the royal family, so the responsibilities he has to bear are not something he can decide. This also determines the path he will take in the future. Killing is not what he wants. No one wants to live their whole life in a struggle. And some people may be born poor, but the world is peaceful. They can live and work in peace. They do good deeds every day, which is what you call accumulating good deeds. In the future, they will have the priority to choose in the 6 paths of reincarnation. The Buddha says that all life is equal, but from this point of view, it is ultimately not equal. Su Jian listened attentively to her words. She always surprised him in every debate. Almsgiver Chu's words make sense, but you're only judging from one aspect. It's too one-sided. Reincarnation isn't just one life. When one life ends, the next life will begin. Where one is reborn comes from the previous life. Everything is just fate. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Is there really a next life for people? Is it just to comfort themselves or to deceive themselves? Anyway, I don't believe it. I just want to grasp the present. Su Jian didn't say anything. For a person with an obsession, you can't change it no matter how much you say. Then, Great Master, I won't ask you to ask the Buddha, and I won't argue with you about the inequality of all life. Can you do me a little favor? Chu Qingyan suddenly blinked her big eyes and looked at him intently. Su Jian wasn't surprised by her change of expression. Almsgiver Chu, please speak. He replied with a smile. He didn't agree to help, but directly asked what it was. This gave Chu Qingyan a headache. What if she said it and he refused? She didn't think much and said directly, I want to know the extent of the 3rd princess's illness and whether it can be cured. So, can you take me to Yaoyun Palace? Chu Qingyan looked at him sincerely. If they could know the 3rd princess's illness and if it could be cured, then they would have a bargaining chip to negotiate with the emperor of Jiang Kingdom. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Chapter 469. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she was afraid that he wouldn't agree, so she continued, Great Master, don't you Buddhists always preach that saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda? Moreover, I heard that the 3rd princess is very popular among the people. She's kind and beautiful. How can you Buddhists bear to leave such a good girl in the lurch? Don't you say that monks are compassionate? Su Jian looked at her quietly. After she finished speaking, he smiled faintly and said, Benefactor Chu, this penniless monk didn't say that he would leave her in the lurch. Please don't pin such a crime on this penniless monk. Moreover, this penniless monk doesn't work on this penniless monk. Seeing that he saw through her thoughts, Chu Qingyan smiled embarrassedly, but she quickly reacted. You mean that you're willing to help me? Su Jian nodded. Just as Benefactor Chu said, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Moreover, isn't being compassionate your impression of us Buddhists? We can't disappoint you, right? Chu Qingyan touched her nose awkwardly. Why did she have the misconception that this person was using her words to tease her? Thinking of this, she looked at him suspiciously, but she saw that he was still standing there with no joy or sorrow in his eyes. The smile on his lips was as indifferent as usual. She thought that perhaps she was overthinking things. The person in front of her only knew how to talk about grand principles other than chanting scriptures and Buddhism. How could he suddenly be enlightened? She stopped worrying about this and asked, Then how can I enter Yaoyun Palace? Su Jian pondered for a moment, then slowly said, 2 days later, this penniless monk will be chanting scriptures for the 3rd princess. You can come to Jingyun Temple to find this penniless monk then. Chu Qingyan readily agreed. Now that this matter was resolved, she relaxed. Then she asked curiously, Great Master, will your chanting help the 3rd princess's condition? She wasn't deliberately looking for trouble, but she was truly curious. Su Jian shook his head. This won't help her condition. It's just that the third princess often has nightmares when she sleeps. But even if she sleeps more than she wakes up, being constantly in nightmares will worsen her mental strength. Someone told His Majesty that the third princess had provoked something she shouldn't have, so His Majesty invited this penniless monk to exorcise the evil spirit for the third princess. After so many days, this penniless monk has only been able to help the third princess sleep peacefully. However, this is only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. No one has found the true cause of the illness, but from the looks of it, the third princess's condition is worsening. It seemed that Jiang Yunyao's illness was more serious than she thought. All right, thank you Grandmaster for helping Qin Yan so much. I still have to rush back to Thousand Feathers Palace, so I won't be accompanying you. Teet 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 teet. Teet, you. T. He had originally planned to help her, but she was too guarded, so he could only wait for her to bring it up herself. The King of England's star had suddenly dimmed in the past few months, but it hadn't fallen. Now it was slowly regaining its light. This was probably all thanks to Chu Qingyan. Her appearance had changed the King of England and saved him. At the same time, she would affect the entire world in the following days. The Junlan Kingdom was an example, and so was the Jiang Kingdom. Su Jian put his palms together and chanted softly, "Buddha is merciful. Amitabha." But Su Jian didn't know that she had changed not only Xiao Su, but also him. When Chu Qingyan returned to the entrance of the Thousand Feathers Palace, she happened to see Steward Yi leaving with the cloth. She saw that Chu Qingyan had only just returned. Due to the presence of the eunuch, she said a few words to her. Chu Qingyan tactfully bowed her head and listened. At this moment, the old servant said to Steward Yi, "The Empress likes those cloth very much. Go back and prepare more to send to the palace." Steward Yi was very pleased and repeatedly agreed. Then he led everyone out of the palace. Chu Qingyan returned to the Yi residence and went straight to the study. At this moment, there was only Xiao Su in the study. Big ice block, I've gained a lot from this trip to the palace. People were in high spirits when faced with happy events. Chu Qingyan's feet carried the wind as she walked briskly towards him. Seeing her return, Xiao Su felt that the cold room was suddenly a little livelier. He put down the book in his hand and looked at her. His brows unconsciously relaxed. "What did you gain?" Chu Qingyan jumped in front of him and smiled proudly. "Big ice block, do you know who the eminent monk that the Jiang Kingdom spent a lot of effort to invite is?" Xiao Su raised his brows and said without hesitation, "Su Jian?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. She murmured, "Big ice block, you're really too amazing. How did you guess it was him? The eminent monk invited by the Jiang Kingdom, and you know him. He's the only one who fulfills these two conditions. It's not hard to guess." Xiao Su's expression was calm and collected, but his mood was also lightened by the little fellow's praise. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. "That's true. But you know how surprised I was when I saw him inside. And he was the one who saved me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to come back." Seeing her eyes widen like copper bells, filled with lingering fear and relief, but they did not lose their adorableness, Xiao Su's lips curved. "This is your gain?" Hearing this, she immediately shook her head. "Of course not." Then, she recounted her conversation with Su Jian in full detail to him. After that, she tilted her head and looked at him. Her tone was slightly mischievous as she said, "Big ice block, this is my gain today. Please review it." "Yes, if we can find out the third princess's illness, we'll have another bargaining chip in our hands." After listening to the little fellow's description, although she did not elaborate on the process and was still talking cheerfully with him, he could still feel her panic when she was discovered. His gaze softened and his tone became warmer. At this moment, Chu Qingyan was immersed in this gain and did not notice the change in the expression of the person in front of her. She said happily, that's right. When the time comes, I'll bring Yen Luo and let her take a look at the third princess's illness. If she can figure it out, our ice crystal flower might be settled." Perhaps influenced by her, Xiao Su's brows softened. "Thank you for your hard work." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan bent down and crossed her hands to support her chin. She looked at him with shifty eyes. In that case, does Big Ice Block have any rewards? What do you want as a reward? Xiao Su's lips curled into a faint smile. His black eyes lost some of their coldness. The little fellow was quite muddle-headed when she should be, but shrewd when she should not be. However, with this kind of temperament, at least she would not be at a disadvantage, so he was not worried. Chapter 470. Let me think. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes, and suddenly her eyes lit up. Big Ice Cube, after your poison is cured, how about we go for a walk? How about taking a break and enjoying the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers? When she said this, her eyes revealed a trace of longing. Traveling has always been my wish. Their dormitory had long decided to go on a graduation trip in their 4th year. Unfortunately, before she finished her studies, the whole dynasty had been turned upside down when she opened her eyes. Up to you. He smiled lightly and calmly. He knew that her thoughts were very simple. What she had always wanted to do was to travel around the world, and he had heard her talk about it countless times. Chu Qingyan felt that these 2 words sounded very comfortable, generous, and generous. Play as you please, spend as you please, and toss as you please. Unlike the current Phoenix man, who haggles over every penny and calculates every cent clearly. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes in satisfaction and began to think about where to go first and where to go again. Slowly, a route appeared in her mind. The happiest thing in the world was nothing more than me bringing you along and you bringing money. The Big Ice Cube was her mobile ATM. Chu Qingyan thought happily, but she did not know that her expression had already fallen into someone's eyes. As far as he was concerned, the future was no longer that important to him. He had experienced loneliness, achieved glory, and was also in a difficult situation. For the first half of his life, he could not choose for himself, but for the following days, he did not want to repeat the same mistakes. Now, he only wanted to be responsible for the little fellow. Gratitude and grudges, wealth and power, they had nothing to do with him. Chu Qingyan accompanied Xiao Su in the study for a while before returning to her room to change her clothes. Duguqing was sick, so she had to go and see her to be at ease. An hour later, she appeared in Duguqing's room. At this time, only Duguqing was in the room. Chu Qingyan looked at her pale face lying on the bed, and her heart could not help but clench. Why did you suddenly have a fever? Has the fever gone down? Did someone come to see you? Did you take medicine? Why is there no one serving you? Chu Qingyan threw a series of questions at Duguqing. Duguqing was coughing at this time. Hearing Chu Qingyan's words, she showed a rare helpless look. You have so many questions. Which one should I answer first? Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose when she saw Duguqing rolling her eyes. Let's do it one by one. I'm just worried about you. I don't know how I got sick either. My fever has just subsided. Sister Yen Luo came over to check on me and prescribed me some medicine. The lass is brewing the medicine now. Perhaps she was really too tired. Duguqing's tone was not as energetic as before, and she looked sickly. She really answered all the questions. If it was on a normal day, she would probably argue with Chu Qingyan a few times. It's good that your fever is gone. Drink some medicine and rest for 2 more days. You'll be able to jump around in no time. Chu Qingyan sat down on the edge of the bed and adjusted the quilt for her. His tone was no longer anxious and worried, and he was relieved. Running a fever in the middle of winter was no joke. Once a fever broke out, it would take a long time. Did you make any progress at the palace today? Duguqing asked in a hoarse voice. Chu Qingyan nodded and gave her a summary of her findings. After she finished, she sighed. I didn't expect that the eminent monk we were talking about was actually from the Sichuan kingdom. Duguqing leaned against the bed wall and smiled. Sometimes life is like this. Just when you're at the end of your rope, you'll suddenly see the light at the end of the tunnel. Perhaps this Master Su Jian is your benefactor. He's a world-renowned senior monk. The people from our kingdom hold him in high regard. Benefactor? Chu Qingyan was taken aback. She recalled all the Buddhist teachings that he had been talking about and all the mysterious things that had happened to him here. Chu Qingyan still felt that it was fine as long as this person was not here to trick them. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Dugu Qing couldn't help but be amused by her reaction. They also worshipped Buddha in the modern world, but they didn't worship someone like they did in the ancient times. Chu Qingyan held her chin and thought for a moment. She thought that the ancient people probably wouldn't be able to accept this. She said, "It's a long story. Anyway, I think he's just a normal person. It's just that you've beautified him too much." "Is that so? I feel like you're prejudiced against him. But he's already more than willing to help you. Don't burn the bridge after crossing it." Dugu Qing shook her head. She was very disdainful of her behavior of repaying evil with good. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Was she prejudiced against him? Was she? Just as she was questioning herself, Dugu Qing suddenly coughed. Chu Qingyan hurriedly patted her back to soothe her and forgot about it. After sitting for a while, Chu Qingyan got up to leave. "Quickly rest. I'll go first. I'll come back to see you later." "You go ahead. I'll sit for a while more." Dugu Qing waved her hand. Seeing her tired face but not resting, Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled. But she still nodded and left. Listening to the sound of the door being closed, Dugu Qing smiled faintly. She was indeed very tired, but just now the maidservant went to find Yi Lingfeng. If he came later and she fell asleep, she would not be able to see him, so she forced herself to hold on to her spiritual power and waited for him. When the servant girl serving Dugu Qing finished reporting to Yi Lingfeng about her illness, Yi Lingfeng threw down the book in his hand and quickly walked towards the door. As he walked, he asked, "Is the illness serious? Have you asked anyone to take a look?" Yi Lingfeng was tall, long-legged and anxious, so he walked very quickly. The maidservant could only jog to keep up with him. She panted as she replied, "When I woke up this morning, Miss Dugu had a fever, so I asked Miss Qing to come over. Miss Qing gave Miss Dugu a pill and helped Miss Dugu make the medicine. The herbs are now being boiled in the kitchen." Hearing this, Yi Lingfeng was relieved. But it was also at this time that he suddenly woke up. Dugu Qing was just sick. Why was he so agitated? If he went over to see her now, would she misunderstand? Thinking of this, Yi Lingfeng stopped in his tracks. The servant girl behind him was puzzled. "Young master, you're not going? Help me pass a message. Let her rest well. If she needs any herbs, she can ask you to go to the storeroom to get it." Yi Lingfeng's expression returned to normal as he instructed. He was clearly anxious and worried just now, but now he was verbally concerned. The servant girl didn't know why her young master's expression changed so quickly, but she still obediently agreed. The door was pushed open. Dugu Qing's face was originally full of anticipation. But when she saw that it was the servant girl who came back alone, the light in her eyes was extinguished. Especially when the servant girl said her young master's instructions, the smile on her lips disappeared without a trace. Dugu Qing's eyes were a little sad. Sometimes, if she forced herself to stay awake for too long without a response, she would be tired. Just like now, she already didn't have any extra energy to hold on. Closing her eyes, she fell into a deep darkness. Chapter 471. 2 days passed quickly. Chu Qingyan brought Chengyan Luo to Jingyun Temple. Jingyun Temple was the largest Buddhist temple in the capital of Jiang Kingdom. Chu Qingyan was in a dilemma as she looked at the bustling main hall filled with people and incense. How was she going to find Su Jian in such a big place? At this moment, a young novice monk was standing at the place where people were offering incense money. Chu Qingyan went up to him and asked, "Young master, we're looking for Master Su Jian from Sichuan Kingdom. Can you introduce us to him?" The young novice monk sized them up, then put his palms together and bowed to Chu Qingyan with a smile. "Are you almsgiver Chu from Sichuan Kingdom?" Chu Qingyan immediately nodded and admitted, "Yes, I am. Master Su Jian told me to wait here early this morning. Sure enough, you're here. Please follow me." With that, the young novice monk gestured for them to follow him. Chu Qingyan and Chengyan Luo nodded to the young novice monk, then followed him to the back of the main hall. Jingyun Temple was not made up of just one temple. There were several other halls behind the main hall. After they followed the young novice monk through several halls, the view in front of them suddenly widened. Lush greenery filled the air, and a bamboo forest appeared before them. Master Su Jian lives behind the bamboo forest, the young novice monk explained, then took the lead and walked in. It was rare to see such lush greenery in winter. Chu Qingyan's eyes revealed a hint of joy, and she felt much more relaxed. After entering the bamboo forest, they saw a snow-white figure sitting in the pavilion. His posture was calm, and his appearance was as gentle as jade. There was a pure and holy smile on his lips, like a lotus flower. "Master, they're here," the young novice monk said respectfully with a bow. He had already seen Chu Qingyan and the other two walking over. After the young novice monk finished speaking, he nodded to them with a smile. The young novice monk quickly retreated. "Master, I've brought a good friend who's good at medicine. I hope he can come with me to treat the third princess." Even though Su Jian wasn't surprised to see Qingyan Luo, Chu Qingyan felt that it wasn't appropriate for her to bring Qingyan Luo over without asking for his permission. Qingyan Luo stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, Master Su Jian. I'm Qingyan Luo." Su Jian returned the greeting and said with a smile, "Benefactor Cheng, there's no need to be so polite. Next, I'll have to ask the two of you to change your attire." Half a cup of tea's time later, Chu Qingyan looked at her own monk's robes and Qingyan Luo's head. Her hair was hidden under her monk's hat, and so was hers. She couldn't help but say to Su Jian, "When you advised me to join Buddhism, I didn't agree. Who would have thought that one day, I would put on monk's robes and become a little nun?" If almsgiver Chu wishes to join Buddhism now, it is not too late. Although the green monk's robes were plain and simple, they surprisingly fit her well. Moreover, they couldn't conceal her noble and mischievous aura. Su Jian couldn't help asking, even though he knew that she wasn't interested in Buddhism. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. "Master, why are you still hung up on this? Obsession isn't good." Su Jian only smiled and didn't answer. On the other hand, Qingyan Luo's casual attitude toward Chu Qingyan in front of Su Jian was inconceivable. After all, he was the holy monk in their hearts. After dressing up, a young novice monk came in and said that the carriage was ready and they could set off at any time. Thus, the three of them set off for the palace. The carriage was large enough for 4 or 5 people to ride together. The three of them were now sitting together in the carriage. Su Jian's eyes were closed as he fiddled with the prayer beads in his hand. He looked like he was detached from the world. Qingyan Luo, on the other hand, leaned close to Chu Qingyan's ear and whispered, "Little girl, this Master Su Jian looks so young and handsome. He doesn't lose to Yi Lingfeng at all. It's a pity that he became a monk." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh at her sigh. "Have you taken a fancy to him? It's not impossible for monks to return to the secular world. As long as he has feelings for you, everything will be fine." Before she could finish, Qingyan Luo gave her a chestnut. "Little girl, why are you spouting nonsense? Can't you think of something normal?" Qingyan Luo's tone was angry and embarrassed. She didn't know if the master had heard her. Chu Qingyan rubbed her bun head, feeling very wronged. She was telling the truth. However, she didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt as if Su Jian had coughed lightly. Could he have caught a cold too? Because of what she said, Qingyan Luo ignored her. Chu Qingyan couldn't find anyone to talk to, so she stared at the wall of the carriage until they reached the palace. Entering the palace went smoothly because the carriage they took was sent by the palace. Thinking back to when she and Stewardy entered the palace, they had to go through layers of checks. It was unlike now, where they could enter without any obstructions. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. Comparisons were odious. After alighting from the carriage, Su Jian led the two of them to Yaoyan Palace. Along the way, they were unimpeded. All the palace servants and guards they met took the initiative to bow and make way for them. This made Chu Qingyan even more surprised. It turned out that Su Jian held such a high position in the hearts of the people. She looked at Su Jian's indifferent expression and recalled her previous behavior towards him. She couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, no one had discovered them, otherwise they would have become the enemy of the people. With Su Jian as their living signboard, the three of them quickly arrived at Yaoyan Palace. Perhaps they knew that Su Jian would be here today, so the palace doors were wide open. The palace maid who had talked with Commandery Princess Ning before was standing at the door to welcome them. As soon as she saw Su Jian, she went to greet him. "Greetings, master. Today, my princess was still talking about when you would come." Seeing Su Jian, Ryue breathed a sigh of relief and said with joy, "Did the princess sleep well last night?" Su Jian asked as he walked. Ryue sighed and said, "The princess has been waking up more frequently recently. Last night, she woke up 7 or 8 times. I feel sorry for her." Su Jian nodded. It seemed that the princess's illness had worsened. After that, Ryue saw Chu Qingyan and Qingyan Luo. She felt that they were very strange, so she couldn't help asking, "Master, who are they?" Su Jian smiled as before and said, "They are my friends who are good at medical skills. I want to take them to the princess." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan and Qingyan Luo put their palms together and bowed to Ryue. Ryue just asked casually. Hearing that they were good at medical skills, she was happy but worried. "Our princess has seen many doctors, but there is no progress. Even our princess is about to give up." "Miss Ryue, don't worry. We'll know after taking her pulse," Qingyan Luo said. "All right, then follow this servant." At this time, they just arrived at the inner hall. Ryue made a gesture of invitation, so they stepped into third princess's room. Chapter 472. The moment Chu Qingyan stepped into the room, she was greeted with a faint fragrance that seeped into her nose and refreshed her spirit. She thought it should be used to wake her up. After all, the third princess fell asleep all day long. But Chu Qingyan saw Yen Luo frown slightly when she smelled the fragrance. Although she had doubts, she didn't ask because of her identity. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the furnishings of the whole room. The decorations were mainly pink and green. There were several pictures of flowers and birds hanging on the wall. The whole atmosphere was very delicate. There was no expensive porcelain decoration, but there were many small ornaments, such as clay figurines inserted in bamboo tubes, kites hanging on the wall, and some handmade ornaments. If she hadn't known in advance that this was the room of a princess, she would have thought it was a boudoir of a family, because it was not luxurious and rich like the royal family, but warm and beautiful. The three of them stood outside a curtain. Chu Qingyan could vaguely see a bed and a half-sitting figure through the pink tassel curtain. She couldn't see the rest clearly. "Princess, the master is here." Ryue lifted the curtain and said with a smile. Hearing this, the person sitting inside turned her head and said, "Master, you're here." Her voice was gentle and melodious, like water and a song. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned and couldn't help looking over. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her eyebrows were curved. Her white skin was as smooth as jade, with a touch of pink. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders. Perhaps she had been lying in bed for a long time. In order to make it convenient for her to rest, her hair was tied with a blue silk ribbon, and her bangs on her forehead were scattered casually. But such a casual dress added elegance to her. There was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth, and she was graceful. She was wearing a pink dress embroidered with complicated blue balsam flowers. Chu Qingyan could see that the stitching was very tight, more exquisite than Princess Ning's. She looked elegant and refined, giving people the temperament of a fairy in the jade pool. She was as beautiful as a celestial being in the clouds. She was a graceful and virtuous woman, a peerless beauty. Chu Qingyan was breathtaking. Although the person in front of her was a little sickly, she didn't feel weak. Every frown and smile of his was breathtaking. At this time, Ryue had already ordered someone to lift the gauze curtain. Then she turned to Su Jian and said, "My princess woke up this morning. Because she knew that the master was coming, she didn't go to sleep." "I've kept the princess waiting," Su Jian said apologetically. Jiang Yunyao shook her head with a smile. "Master, don't listen to Ryue's nonsense. It's because I've been sleeping more than waking up recently. I don't want to live in such a drowsy state anymore." After she finished speaking, Jiang Yunyao looked at the two people standing behind Su Jian and asked curiously, "Who are these two?" "These are my two friends. They heard that the princess is ill, So they want to do something to help, Su Jian replied. Chu Qingyan knew that monks didn't lie, so she went forward and finished his sentence. Little nun Wu Yen, this is my senior sister, Wu Yen. Senior sister has some understanding of pathology. When she heard about the princess's illness, she would like to trouble Master Su Jian to recommend her to take a look at the princess. So you're Master Su Jian's good friends. Sorry for not going out to meet you. Sorry for troubling you. Jiang Yunyao was pleasantly surprised, but after the pleasant surprise, she became a little downcast. I've been ill for more than a year. I've seen countless doctors, but unfortunately, I haven't gotten any better. I might disappoint you. She was humble, polite, and gentle. Chu Qingyan felt that she was a cute girl without the airs of a princess. Princess, don't worry. Let this penniless nun take your pulse later. Cheng Yanluo couldn't accept the nickname Chu Qingyan gave her, but she had to consider the big picture. Therefore, she didn't bicker with her for the time being. She spoke seriously to Jiang Yunyao, who was lying on the couch. Then I'll have to trouble Master Wu Yen, Jiang Yunyao said gratefully with a smile. Chu Qingyan clearly saw the corner of Cheng Yanluo's mouth twitch. She couldn't help but look away. She had no choice but to blurt out those words when they appeared in her mind. Ruyue had already arranged for someone to bring a chair. Cheng Yanluo sat down and placed her finger on Jiang Yunyao's wrist, sensing it with rapt attention. Everyone shifted their gazes to the two of them. If she guessed correctly, according to Su Jian's introduction, Jiang Yunyao didn't seem to have many days left to live. However, from the moment they met until now, she hadn't seen Jiang Yunyao show any signs of self-abandonment or panic. She only occasionally showed signs of disappointment, but she still gave off a clear and spirited vibe. This made Chu Qingyan very impressed. This was a young lady who made people feel good about her. Chu Qingyan found it hard to reconcile the current Jiang Yunyao with the resolute woman who broke her engagement. Just as Chu Qingyan was observing her, Jiang Yunyao seemed to sense her gaze. Perhaps it was because no one had looked at her so directly. She raised her head and met Chu Qingyan's gaze. Just as Chu Qingyan thought she had been caught red-handed, Jiang Yunyao curved her eyebrows and gave her a kind smile. When she didn't smile, she was elegant and moving. When she smiled, it was as if spring flowers bloomed. It was no wonder the people of Jiang Kingdom liked her so much. Her bright eyes and every frown and smile was as warm as spring. Chu Qingyan felt that she had successfully become her fan. Just as Chu Qingyan was sizing up Jiang Yunyao was also sizing her up. She hadn't seen a stranger for a long time. Furthermore, it was such a delicate and cute little girl. Her lively eyes reminded her of a kitten she had raised in the past. Unfortunately, it had disappeared. Now that she saw this little girl, she couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. At this time, Cheng Yanluo suddenly spoke, "Princess, can you let me take a look at your other hand?" Jiang Yunyao obediently raised her other hand and let Cheng Yanluo take her pulse. Seeing Yanluo's serious face, Chu Qingyan couldn't help narrowing her eyes. Was this illness very difficult to deal with? She couldn't be sure and could only take her pulse again. "Princess, do you often feel weak all over and fall into a nightmare? Then you wake up with a start and fall asleep immediately after waking up? You can't stand greasy food and have no appetite. Do you often feel a headache, especially in your temples?" After a moment, Cheng Yanluo withdrew her hand and asked seriously. Ruyue interrupted, "Master, what you said are basically the symptoms of our princess. But our princess doesn't usually feel a headache. Are you mistaken?" Although Ruyue said so, Cheng Yanluo didn't look at her. Instead, she stared at Jiang Yunyao. She believed in her own judgment. At first, Ruyue didn't take Cheng Yanluo's statement seriously. But when she saw her princess's expression, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. Could it be that the princess had been hiding it from His Majesty and the Empress? At this time, Jiang Yunyao had put away the smile on her face. She looked at Cheng Yanluo and said seriously, "Yes, master." Chapter 473. Jiang Yunyao's admission didn't make Cheng Yanluo happy at all. Instead, she looked more serious. Cheng Yanluo's reaction made Chu Qingyan's heart skip a beat. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became gloomy. Master Wu Yan, if you have something to say, just say it. I can bear it. I've given up on my illness a long time ago, so it doesn't matter even if I say something wrong. Jiang Yunyao smiled slightly, trying to comfort her. Ru Yu's eyes reddened. Princess, don't say that. Your fortune is in the hands of heaven. You will definitely get better. After saying that, she immediately turned to Qing Yanluo. Master speechless, tell us quickly. What's wrong with our princess? Cheng Yanluo couldn't help looking at Chu Qingyan. There was some hesitation in her eyes. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan reached out and touched her sleeve. This was the secret signal they had discussed before, in case of an emergency. Cheng Yanluo's eyes flashed. Then she turned to Jiang Yunyao. Princess, can you ask your servants to leave? Jiang Yunyao was a little surprised. Before she could speak, Ryue frowned and said, Master Wu Yan, does the princess's illness need to be taboo? Is there anything that can't be said? Cheng Yanluo threw out these two words simply and rudely. Ryue had never seen such a straightforward person. She was suddenly choked by her words. At this time, Jiang Yunyao said to Ryue, ask everyone in the room to leave. Then she smiled at Chu Qingyan and others. Ryue grew up with me since childhood. She can be trusted. It's good to leave her alone to take care of the princess. Chu Qingyan nodded to Cheng Yanluo. Then Cheng Yanluo began to speak. Third princess, I've made some progress on your illness. My initial diagnosis is... Cheng Yanluo paused as she looked into Jiang Yunyao's clear eyes. Jiang Yunyao looked like a nice and kind-hearted girl. She shouldn't have thought that someone would plot against her, right? But the truth was so bloody. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she had regained her composure as a doctor. She opened her thin lips and said, she's poisoned. Poisoned? As soon as he said this, Jiang Yunyao and her servant were both astonished. Ryue said excitedly, how is it possible? Who dares to murder our princess? Moreover, so many imperial physicians and famous doctors all said that the princess caught a cold and then became depressed, which led to her illness. Although it's a stretch to say that it can explain the illness. But what kind of cold can't be cured after more than a year and a half? It's too far-fetched. Cheng Yanluo shook her head. Master Wu Yan, what do you mean poisoning? Jiang Yunyao had already calmed down. She stared at Cheng Yanluo with a serious expression, exuding the air of a royal princess. Chu Qingyan nodded silently. This Jiang Yunyao might be loved by everyone, but she was neither spoiled nor brainless. Instead, she treated people warmly and was calm in the face of trouble. Chu Qingyan gave her extra points in her heart. When no one was looking, Chu Qingyan nodded to Cheng Yanluo. After receiving Chu Qingyan's hint, Cheng Yanluo said, Third princess, your symptoms are similar to a cold, such as coughing and sleepiness. But these are only superficial symptoms. You're not sick, but poisoned. To be more precise, you're poisoned with hallucinogens. That's why you have nightmares at night. The poison isn't strong, but the hallucinogens can destroy one's willpower. It will slowly erode your body, causing it to weaken. When it reaches a certain level She didn't continue, but everyone understood what she meant. I want to know how you got poisoned. The meals and utensils in the palace are checked and controlled. It's difficult to take advantage of them. Jiang Yunyao was puzzled. She had lived in the palace for more than 10 years. She was used to the palace servants around her. Moreover, her imperial father, imperial mother, and imperial brothers doted on and protected her. No one would have the chance to do anything to her. Cheng Yanluo replied, Your Highness, this poison is called death of loss. It means that a person will die unknowingly in a daze. The method of poisoning is very strange because it's produced by two completely unrelated substances. For example, the herbs you took to treat your typhoid and... She paused and pointed at the incense burner in the room. Spices. You mean to say that these two substances aren't poisonous, but when they're put together, they produce a slow-acting poison? Chu Qingyan deduced. That's right. Cheng Yanluo nodded. There's one herb that most doctors like to use to treat typhoid. It's peppermint. No matter where it's placed, no one would think that it would cause any harm. But if it's mixed with a special spice, the result will be different. It'll cause harm instead of healing. So the main problem lies with the spice. Jiang Yunyao asked, hitting the nail on the head. Cheng Yanluo walked to the side of the gold-plated incense burner and sniffed it. An expression of, as expected, surfaced on her face. She then turned around and said, "This spice has the effect of refreshing the mind. But if it's mixed with other substances, it'll spread in the air after it's ignited. The patient who drank the peppermint will be poisoned after smelling it. Because its symptoms are very similar to typhoid, they're often lumped together and cause the patient to lose the chance of treatment." "Then what's the matter with the hallucinogen?" Chu Qingyan asked, puzzled. Cheng Yanluo pondered for a moment, then raised her head to look at Jiang Yunyao. "If this humble nun's conjecture is correct, Your Highness's clothes should have been sprinkled with the powder of hallucinogen. You've been taking it day and night. That's why you're in such a deep sleep. If you don't believe me, Your Highness can take off your clothes and bring them to the Imperial Academy of Medicine for an examination." Jiang Yunyao lowered her head to look at her clothes. Her face paled slightly. If this person was right, then the palace she lived in was too terrifying. There were murderous intents hidden everywhere. "Then can our princess's poison be cured?" Ryue asked anxiously. Their princess had been poisoned for more than a year. It had been too long. This was the question that everyone was most concerned about. Cheng Yanluo revealed a troubled expression. "The poison of Guang Wang hasn't appeared in the world for a long time. This humble nun needs to go back and check the medical books. But rest assured, Your Highness, this humble nun will do her best to find a cure." Jiang Yunyao nodded. "Thank you, Master Wen." After sending off Chu Qingyan and her entourage, Jiang Yunyao immediately ordered Ryue, "Invite my imperial father here. Don't alarm my imperial mother first. Also, no one is to reveal what happened today." Ryue had never seen such a cold side of the princess. She quickly complied and then immediately went out of the hall to find the emperor of Jiang Kingdom. Chapter 474. Chu Qingyan and her entourage left the palace and boarded the carriage. "I didn't expect the third princess to really be poisoned. It wasn't an accident." Chu Qingyan lamented. She couldn't help but recall the time when Xiao Ran had delivered pastries to Big Ice Cube. If she hadn't eaten them by mistake, Big Ice Cube would have been the one poisoned. The imperial family looked glamorous on the surface, but who knew that it was fraught with danger and treachery? Cheng Yanluo could hear the disappointment in her voice and couldn't help but laugh. "Why are you sighing? You've been by Big Ice Cube's side for so long, so you should have seen this kind of thing many times, right? Could it be that your Big Ice Cube has protected you so well that you haven't seen a single drop of blood?" The dark clouds hanging over Chu Qingyan's head dissipated at her teasing. She rolled her eyes at Cheng Yanluo and went straight to the point. "How serious is the third princess poison?" Cheng Yanluo regained her composure. "If we hadn't appeared, she would have died in less than half a month." "Then are you confident that you can cure the poison?" Chu Qingyan asked. This was the most crucial question. "This kind of small poison isn't a problem for me at all. It'll just take some time." Cheng Yanluo leaned against the carriage wall, her expression relaxed. "Drag it out for 2 or 3 days. It'll make it easier for us to carry out our next plan." Chu Qingyan nodded. She felt as if the clouds had parted and the moon had seen the light of day. If the poison was easy to cure, it wouldn't attract the attention of Jiang Kingdom's emperor. They would only have a higher chance of obtaining the ice crystal flower if they created the impression that it was harder than ascending to heaven. Moreover, it seemed like only Yanluo could detoxify this poison. To other people, it was just an incurable poison. They weren't exactly lying. Su Jian asked, "Benefactor Chu, is there anything I can help you with?" Although he knew that they knew how to cure the poison but chose to hide it, he knew that she had her own plans and didn't ask. Chu Qingyan immediately nodded and smiled. "Master, we need your help with something. The Emperor of Jiang Country will definitely know about the matter of the third princess being poisoned. When the time comes, he will summon us into the palace. I hope you can introduce us." With Su Jian around, they should be able to gain the trust of the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom faster and complete the transaction. "That's not a problem." Su Jian nodded. Returning to Jingyun Temple, the two changed back into their own clothes. After bidding farewell to Su Jian, they returned to Yi Manor. Upon entering the Yi residence, Chu Qingyan immediately went to look for Xiao Su. When Chu Qingyan left the palace, she had already asked Xiao Lai to inform Big Ice Cube. At this time, everyone was already waiting in the study. As soon as they entered the door, Qing Yenluo told everyone about what she had discovered in Yaoyan Palace. Miss Cheng, how confident are you in dealing with this poison? Xiao Su pondered for a moment and asked. 90%. Cheng Yenluo originally wanted to say 100%, but when she answered, she saw Murong Ju looking at her, so she changed her words. She didn't want him to think that she was a conceited person. She was still a very modest person. However, was there a difference between 90% and 100%? Today, the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom will know about the third princess' illness. The earliest he will summon us to the palace is tomorrow. When that time comes, we will bring up the matter of the ice crystal flower to the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. If everything goes well, when the third princess recovers, we will be able to obtain the ice crystal flower. Chu Qingyan's lips curled up, revealing a confident smile. That's great. In this way, we can help the third princess detoxify and ask the Emperor of Jiang country for the ice crystal flower. Mu Ling's face was full of joy. Not bad, not bad. Brother Xiao, your child bride is very smart. Her IQ is almost as high as your 10-year-old IQ. I admit that I am inferior to her. Yi Lingfeng closed his folding fan and smiled sincerely. However, his mouth was unforgiving and he took the opportunity to tease. You let me win. Although the words, child bride, made people want to roll their eyes, Chu Qingyan still cupped her hands and bowed like a man. Xiao Su slightly raised the corner of his mouth. It's rare for you to admit that your IQ is inferior to mine. Yi Lingfeng choked. All right, he had been checkmated again. They discussed for a while more and then left the study to do their own things. Once again, only she and Xiao Su were left in the study. Big Iceberg, am I awesome? Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Generally speaking, yes, but not strict enough. Xiao Su looked at her face full of joy, but he had to give her a blow. Chu Qingyan was stunned. What was she not strict enough? Seeing her head full of confusion, Xiao Su waved at her. Come here. Chu Qingyan obediently walked in front of him. Because she was tired from walking all the way, she sat on his lap and nestled in his arms like a little kitten. Normally, she would often hug his neck like this because the big iceberg's body made her feel at ease. However, she was a little unhappy at this time. What did I not do well? I think my plan was flawless. The little fellow's mood did not escape Xiao Su's eyes. Originally, he did not need to say it. At this age, she had already done well enough. However, he had high expectations. He hoped that she could improve and was not satisfied with this age. First, your identity. You disguised yourself as a nun. This identity cannot withstand a single blow. Xiao Su did not waste any more words and directly threw out the problem. Chu Qingyan's face turned pale when she heard this. This was arranged by Su Jian. No one should have recognized me. Every step of the plan is crucial. There is no such thing as should, or shouldn't, possible, or impossible. Sometimes, the slightest mistake leads to one wrong step after another, and then the whole plan is lost. Xiao Su's tone was stern. If he was lenient with her now, she would fall even more miserably in the future. Chu Qingyan fell silent. The big iceberg was right. She had taken things for granted and had not considered the details. If her identity was exposed, not only would she and the big iceberg be implicated, but the Yi family would also be implicated. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so eager for quick success. After Sister Yen Luo finished taking his pulse and found out about the situation, we should have retreated and informed Kong Ling. We should have asked him to recommend himself as a doctor. Chu Qingyan's tone was a little vexed. Xiao Su nodded and continued, Second, you neglected the hidden enemy. You mean the person who plotted against the third princess? Chu Qingyan was shocked. Since you can think of it right now, it proves that you're not stupid. Xiao Su patted her head. Generally speaking, no one would have the guts or the opportunity to murder the third princess. But in fact, someone did it and did it secretly. If it weren't for your appearance, I'm afraid that the person behind the scenes would have succeeded. Then, how could this person not know of your existence? How would the mastermind obstruct you in order to achieve their goal? Have you thought of all these? After he finished speaking, he saw her standing there in a daze. He knew that she had not thought far enough. However, he was worried that his words would hurt her deeply. He could not help but frown. Chapter 475. After hearing the big ice cube's words, Chu Qingyan's face turned pale. She was too impatient this time. If there was a slight mistake, it would implicate a lot of people. She forgot that in ancient times, challenging the emperor's authority was equivalent to enmeshing oneself in a cocoon. She was really too naive. Big ice cube, I'm sorry. I didn't think so much. I wanted to get the ice crystal flower as soon as possible, but I forgot to consider the details of the plan and didn't discuss it with you. Relying on her cleverness, she had achieved good results along the way, so she began to feel complacent. This was an illness, and it had to be cured. Feeling the guilt and self-blame of the person in his arms, Xiao Su couldn't help but reach out to comfort her. When doing things, 1 step at a time, 3 steps at a time, avoid mistakes, and consider many uncertainties, just like the plan can't keep up with the changes. Chu Qingyan humbly listened to the advice. She pursed her lips and said, "Big ice cube, I know. Now we should think about how to remedy it." Her words made Xiao Su smile. He knew that his little fellow was not deeply hurt by his reproach. Instead, she cheered up. "Okay, what do you think of this matter? I want to know the relationship between Jiang Yunyao and the people around her first. Who wants to harm her and why? How do they want to harm her? I need to know myself and the enemy. Then I have the first suspect, and that is Princess Ning." After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she told him about her encounter with the princess in the Blue Manor. "Okay, let Turin do it." She reacted quickly, which made Xiao Su very satisfied. "Next, you have to be prepared for someone to play the blame game and your identity to be exposed." Chu Qingyan nodded solemnly. This time, the big ice cube really taught her a profound lesson. But after she agreed, she immediately reacted and couldn't help but raise her head. "Big ice cube, you are so assured to leave it to me?" When their eyes met, Xianmo's eyes were as deep as an ancient pool, but it gave people a sense of relief. Chu Qingyan almost couldn't extricate herself. If it weren't for the smile in his eyes, she would probably be absent-minded again. He was wearing a mask and his facial features were not outstanding at all, but she was always unconsciously attracted to him. Could this be the so-called charm? Chu Qingyan couldn't understand. "You don't have confidence?" Xiao Su hugged her loosely and raised his eyebrows. "Boss, are you trying to goad me? Although I've seen through it, you still won. I'm confident." Chu Qingyan lowered her head and nestled in his shoulder. She wrapped her arms around his neck and rubbed against his chest. She complained, but her face was filled with a faint smile. Big Ice Cube believed her. He had given her the chance of survival. As she rubbed, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that something was wrong. She touched her hat and suddenly realized, "I haven't had time to change my clothes." No wonder Yi Lingfeng looked at me and laughed strangely. My reputation. After saying that, she took off her hat, and her hair fell over her shoulders. She touched her messy hair and smiled as she continued to lean on Big Ice Cube. Although she was wearing warm clothes, Big Ice Cube's body was like a heater. It felt more comfortable, and she didn't want to get up after lying there for a while. Looking at the fluffy little head in his arms, Xiao Su couldn't help but reach out to help her tidy up her messy hair. Actually, the little fellow's hair was black and straight. When he combed it with 5 fingers, it naturally became soft. It was a subconscious action, but the little fellow seemed to be addicted to it. After smoothing one side, she changed her angle and let him continue to tidy it up. Xiao Su felt that he had really raised a little pet. At this moment, he was smoothing her hair. Big Ice Cube, I think that with your intelligence, you could have arranged a perfect plan long ago and then let Jiang Country's emperor take out the ice crystal flower. But I found that ever since we came to Jiang Country, You've been lazy and left everything to me. Aren't you afraid that I'll mess it up? Perhaps it was because of her peaceful state of mind. The person in front of her was not as cold as usual. That was why she dared to ask the questions that had been bothering her during this period of time. If it were on a normal day, she wouldn't have this courage. Xiao Su faintly curved his lips and a warm smile flashed across his eyes. In the past, I used to use my brain too much. Now that I have you, it's rare that I can steal half a day of leisure. Isn't that good? Chu Qingyan was stunned. After a while, she understood the meaning of his words. She was a little embarrassed. Could it be that Big Ice Cube was saying that with her around, he could be a hands-off boss? Wasn't he thinking too highly of her? I'm only 10 years old. 10 years old. Although she didn't want to use age to talk about things, Chu Qingyan had to emphasize that she didn't want to overwork herself at such a young age. In another month, you'll be 11. Xiao Su mercilessly gave her a blow to the heart. Chu Qingyan pretended to be dead in his arms. This person was really hateful. He closed his hands and pulled her into his arms like a kitten. After living for 20 years, this period of time was the most comfortable and peaceful days for him. Even if he didn't know if he could cure the poison, his state of mind was the most peaceful. Big Ice Cube, you've been wearing a mask for 10 years. Do you feel uncomfortable? Chu Qingyan played with the belt around his waist in boredom. She inadvertently remembered that when she was in Lan Manor, she had worn a mask for nearly a day. At that time, she couldn't bear it. Now that she thought about it, was it more painful for Big Ice Cube to wear it for so many years? Her heart ached a little. Xiao Su was very calm about the little fellow's sudden change in thoughts. It'll be fine once you get used to it. The first time he wore it, he was only 10 years old. His state of mind wasn't as steady as it was now. Sometimes, he wanted to take it off in irritation. But every time he thought of that big fire, he had to endure it no matter how much pain it was. He endured it for 10 years. Time passed by quickly. He thought that this would be the end of his life. But 10 years later, there was an accident. And this accident was in his arms right now. Wearing a mask is too painful. When we go out in the future, you should change your appearance. No one will recognize you anyway. Chu Qingyan suggested as she counted with her fingers. When she mentioned this issue, Xiao Su's brows twitched. You mind my appearance? Chu Qingyan immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. Why would I? I'm not such a superficial person. Although, I'm obsessed with appearances. She silently added this sentence in her heart. He could tell at a glance whether the little fellow was lying or not. As a reward for her, Xiao Su smiled faintly and promised, during the new year, I'll let you see my true appearance. Chu Qingyan was still counting with her fingers. At first, she didn't have much of a reaction. But soon, her eyes widened. This Big Ice Cube, your appearance wasn't burned, right? She had never touched on this issue, because she was worried that it would be taboo for him. But when he took the initiative to bring it up, Chu Qingyan blurted out the question that had been hidden in her heart for a long time. You'll know when the time comes. Xiao Su pressed her head into his embrace, along with her bewildered gaze. Just treat this as a New Year's gift to her. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.